After nearly a 10-week break, the 24H series is back in action in the northeast corner of Spain. Welcome to Catalunya, to the Circuit de Barcelona, Catalunya, for some very typical Spanish weather. The rain in Spain falls mainly at Circuit de Catalunya, it seems, because a little earlier on today, the cloud cover came over, the skies got very dark indeed, and a lightning storm began. And although we've had little breaks in that through the course of the day, it looks like much of qualifying is going to be affected by wet weather for the TC, TCR, TCX and GT4 cars. Initially, this will span 3 separate sessions, each of 15 minutes. So thank you for joining us. You're bound to be entertained from start to finish, because we'll have the GT element of the qualifying after that, ahead of the 24th edition. What a cracking number that is. 24th edition of the 24 Hours of Barcelona, live right here on the Radio Show Limited network of channels. My name's Johnny Palmer. I'm joined for this segment of our broadcast by Bruce Jones. We can only just pick out the infamous tower, the scoring tower, in fact, in the distance, as I remind you about where we've been in this 5-event schedule for the European Championship. We're bringing that to a close this weekend. Started off for the 12 Hours of Mugello across 2 separate days, then the 12 Hours of Spa in Belgium. There was the second trip to Italy and a 12-hour event in Monza at the start of June. And then, as I say, just under 10 weeks ago, on the other side of the Iberian Peninsula, at Estoril, a cracking circuit that was as well, with 6-hour qualifying on the first day and a 12-hour race on the following day. So it's been quite some wait, but this, Bruce, is actually an event that extends well before the Creventic partnership. It has a long history stretching back to the late 90s, 1998, the first time this event was held.
These outlying events, they were really standalone events. No one could have predicted how a series would rise up, how people would love driving GT cars and cars in the classes below. And it's got to this. Come for fun, come for the sun, they said, but actually come for the run. And today it's about staying off the coast. But I mean, the growth of this championship is something that's really flabbergasted me. It's gone from success to success. We've just had the calendar announced for 2024. We'll touch on that shortly. But again, it's always a movable feast with the Creventic series. But humidity, surprisingly, because it's absolutely tipping with rain, is 94%. But where the other 6% has gone, I do not know. But still quite warm, but it's not what you'd expect when you come to Barcelona in the middle of September. The first car's out on the track, and as Johnny pointed out, it's 3 15-minute qualifying sessions. I noticed a warning on the timing screens for the drivers to stay off the curbing. And right now, that's precisely what they need to do. And again, they'll be looking for the high line, but various points on the circuit where the cars are really kicking up a lot of spray, waterlogged in various parts. Really hard for the camera crews to keep the water off the lenses. Quite moody, quite dynamic, but it's all about not getting it wrong. And the way the qualifying works, Johnny, is of course they send out the sort of the least experienced or the lowest ranked driver in their run to do this first 15 minutes. And what they want to do above all things is put a lap on the board and not put the car off the circuit. That will be large in their head. Car number 121 running in the TCR class. That's Wolf Power Racing, and splashing around there. And it really is. It's tiptoe stuff, but it's about getting that first lap on the board at least.
Yeah. Well, yes. Don't throw it off. Keep it nice and simple. And then you can try and chisel away at finding a bit more time once one lap is completed. But it is tippy-toe stuff, because there's been next to no running in these conditions already this weekend. There was a lengthy red flag in the practice session earlier on today when Tracy Crone was involved in an incident between turn 8 and turn 9. Not of his own making, giving very little space on the run into turn 9. And that resulted in his bright green Crone green, I should say, car going off to the left-hand side and whacking into a number of plastic recticel barriers, but there's been considerable damage done to his car. One thing I should note is from race control, there seems to be a general decision about track limits to basically let the curbs and the grass limit where the drivers can go. So we are unlikely to see a huge amount of track limit penalties, which frankly is quite refreshing this weekend.
Well, it certainly is. The weather's quite refreshing, but looking at Ivers Valars going around, the Latvian driver running in the 121, one of the 3 cars in the TCR class. None of these cars have put a flying lap on the board yet. That will come fairly shortly. They're just getting their out laps completed, but it's a voyage of discovery, just looking to find where the water is sitting at its deepest around the circuit. Clearly windscreen wipers on. Is there going to be a gap in the cloud? Possibly coming, but certainly not for this first grouping, their first 3 qualifying sessions. The 3 15-minute qualifying sessions, 5 minutes in between all of those. And it's 3 cars in the TCR class and 4 cars running in GT4. And Johnny, I suppose at the final round of the 4H European Series, we have to look at the championship battles. In GT4, it's a two-horse race, and the teams we need to look to in GT4 are Atlas BX Motorsport with their number 403 Mercedes, and Bagheera ZM Racing with their Mercedes AMG as well. That's car number 416. In TC class, Home Guard Motorsport have pretty got much things under control. They effectively have to just complete the race, but they want to complete it with another class victory. Gosh, really hard for the camera crews to pick out the cars. If they get up to any particular speed, there's going to be so much spray. But Johnny was talking about the cars staying off the curbing. They're going nowhere near it because they will just slide over the top onto the grass and beyond. So the racing line for them is the middle of the circuit, wherever they are.
Down towards turn 7 then will go the Mercedes with Jaromir Jirik for the Bagheera ZM Racing crew. And this one of a handful of GT4 cars in the field, still waiting for the first meaningful flying laps to come through. And as mentioned, these are the foundation laps, if you like, to try and then layer them later on in the session to see how hard you want to push. But the question is, are conditions going to improve over this 15-minute session? Seems unlikely at the moment. And with these drivers being the lesser experienced, you don't want any heroics, and therefore not a car to hand over for sessions 2 and 3. So although it may feel painfully slow, actually they're doing a cracking job here to make sure the car is pristine by the end of the 15 minutes. Might even want to park it actually after about half of those minutes.
I think so, and of course they always have to make sure the screens are going to be clear and unfogged, but right now their job is terribly simple. Say on the circuit, you stick it in the gravel, it won't get back for the start of the second of the 3 15-minute qualifying sessions. And their job, waiting for the first flying lap, it has actually come in, and we've got Home Guard Motorsport, where they went to top 2 minutes 24. That is way off the natural pace of these cars, but the clock counts down. We've got just under 10 minutes in this 15-minute session still to go. 102 out on the track, one of the 3 cars in the TCR class. That's the one that's fastest of all at the moment. Home Guard Motorsport, Roy Edlund, the Norwegian driver in a crew, otherwise in fact, incredibly international. 2 Danes, Magnus Holmgaard, Jonas Holmgaard, Michael Sallenbach, a Canadian, and Tom Kluert, a Belgian racer. We know it's a very cosmopolitan series. 2 minutes 24.2 seconds is the pace so far. And in fact, as I say that, suddenly we have an improvement. GT4 car goes to top. It's the BMW M4 GT4, Hofer Racing by Monk Motorsport, Maximilian Partel, 2 minutes 21. These are times they'd think they could do in the dry with their eyes closed, but right now they're using all of their vision to just pick out where they want to place their cars.
So as we keep our eyes peeled on lap times that are being set up, or being improved upon rather, but this does seem a stretch at this point in time. I'm getting a feeling I know what Diana Binks is about to tell me, because, Di, it's really not pleasant where you are right now.
It's wonderful. We're in the pit lane in Barcelona. What more could you want? The fact that it's raining like this doesn't really matter. The atmosphere is starting to build down here. The GT teams are actually getting ready for their qualifying session, which is straight after the TCE session, and they're just doing their driver change and swaps and getting ready. But as you said, Johnny and Bruce, everyone's taking it quite easily out there on the track. They don't want to do anything that they don't need to do. The conditions are pretty tricky. It's not cold, it's raining. It's just a shame that the rain has happened, as you said. Not much running for anyone yet, but cars are out on track and we're all underway.
Thank you, Diana Binks. Yes, you are braver than me to be... well, we're in the box. Hello, everybody. Look, in a lovely air-conditioned dry box. Oh, you've missed it.
Hear us.
Nobody can hear you, Bruce, but it's better when you press that button.
Yeah,
in front
you got
of
up and leant on the button. Thank you very much. So it's a real case of camera crews. You really feel they're earning their corn this weekend. That's where you find the seams in your jacket are no good at all. The water's coming in, and let's hope for none of the drivers is the water coming in, because it is about keeping this clean screen. But also you could just see, even at low speed acceleration out of the tighter corners, the fronts of the cars are really washing away, and it is prime for failure. But success is what you need, and success, putting a lap on the board, coming into the pits. Thus far, they're all out on the circuit, however, so maximising their time. They're more than halfway through this session, but nice and tidy so far, with the the 421 Maximilian Partel car top of the tower. Sorry, 431, the BMW. Hofer Racing by Bonk Motorsport. It's grey at the front, blue at the back. Quite hard to pick those out in the murk here.
I'm wondering which type of class you would favour, considering the weather conditions, because normally the TCE element of the field is quite widespread, from the fastest GT4 car to the slowest TCE or TCR car, as we've got this weekend. Is it better to have slightly less power and front-wheel drive rather than rear steering, as the BMW demonstrates very well there through turns 2 and 3? There was a real squirm on and nicely controlled. But you're going to have your wits about you, because you get the feeling that almost the amount of water on the track is changing from lap to lap. This isn't the most populated session, I think it's fair to say. So what we haven't got is a succession of cars running through the water and clearing it constantly. Actually, the water's got a long time to reaccumulate before the next time you go around. We're keeping an eye, by the way, on Rokas Kvendaris in the GSR Motorsport Ginetta G56. Bruce.
Yeah, to be honest, Johnny, if you had 30, 40, 50 cars out on the track, I'm not sure they'd do enough of a job to make any discernible racing line. Right now, it's about visibility. Actually, one of the cars has decided to pit. It's the car that's slowest of all. It's Atlas BX Motorsport. It's the crew that leads the GT4 class, largely with Korean drivers on board. And as you said, maybe just put a lap on the board, come in, give the team more time to hope it dries out for the second of the 3 qualifying sessions. So Taekyung Yang has brought that one in. Hopefully not parked it up for good, but he may well have done.
Yeah, well, there is a lot to be said for keeping your powder dry, as we've said on several occasions now, and spend the time in the car wisely. Don't try and drive outside of your comfort zone, and I think the session will come to you, potentially. If there is any hint of brightness on the horizon, it's certainly not facing our commentary box, so let's assume that this is set in now for the half an hour of qualifying that follows this.
Yeah, I think we are going to have fairly similar weather for this, the first batch of cars, the TC class cars and the GT4s. There is actually slight improvement in light on the sky to the west of the circuit, but that won't affect this bunch. It'll be all the GT3 runners and the cars that go out for the second trio of qualifying sessions. Now we've got a lap time down in the 2 minutes 15s. It went 2 minute 21, 2 minutes 17, 2 minutes 15, all from one car. 431, Maximilian Bartel, top of the pile. He's in the GT4 class. Hofer Racing by Bonk Motorsport BMW. He's over 5 seconds clear of Roy Edland. So it's GT4 from TCR at the top of the tables. But really, it's not surprising there's an enormous array on the times there, Johnny, because quite simply, some drivers are just looking to see where the rivers are so they can report it back to the pit crews. Others maybe just gingerly feeling their way to pressing on. And so for Maximilian Bartel, now with the sort of green livery at the front, fading to dark green and even very dark green at the tail of the car. Red roof, you can pick that out in the fog, but and the mist and the rain, but it's so tricky. But this lap going faster still, it matters not. The main thing he can do is get it back to the pits at the end of the qualifying session.
Yeah, and Max Bartel been racing, well, in international level motorsport for over 10 years, so is very experienced. Also knows the Nürburgring, Nordschleife, where it can be raining on certain segments and bone dry on others. So I'm not saying he's in his natural habitat here, but great car control again from Max Bartel and the Hofer Racing Bonk Motorsport prepared car.
I must say, ever since the BMW M4 GT4 was launched a couple of years ago, when conditions are really tricky, its balance just looks so spot on. It doesn't look as though it's going to bite the driver. Easy for us to say from a dry commentary box, but even in really foul weather, I've been really impressed with this BMW since it was launched.
It's just gone quicker than he's managed all session in that first sector with a 39.6. So that's a rare thing in these conditions, a purple line next to the Hofer Racing by Bonk Motorsport BMW. So bear in mind, as far as the graphics are concerned, if you're enjoying our coverage in sound and vision, the HOF is for the team name rather than the drivers, because they're going to be cycled through the course of 3 different sessions, and we will be focusing entirely on the individual cars and an aggregate time. So you'll be adding the 3 lap times, the 3 best lap times together from each of those sessions and dividing by 3. It might as well be 3 o'clock in the morning, though, from the site of the main straight, because all I can see is headlights, and the surrounding area of the circuit to Catalunya Barcelona is lost in the murk.
And that's down the main straight. So the top car in GT4, top overall, 2 minutes, actually improved its time by literally 0.02 of a second on that lap. So it was going fast. Well done for picking that out with the naked eye. But also the fastest car in TCR, which is 121. It's still Ivars Valaz Wolf Wolf Power Racing, that's third fastest overall, his Audi, but just getting those two coming down the start-finish straight, and quite frankly, where the cameras were looking, I think that's the middle of the track. I think that's where the cars are going to be with all that mist, that really long shot down the start-finish straight. And they did a good job there to pick them out. Into the final 1.5 minutes of this session. One car parked up very early on. That was the 403 Atlas BX Motorsport. Mercedes in the GT4 class did what it needed to do, but has given the following two drivers who are going to take over more time to discuss just how wonderful it is out on the circuit.
Ivars Valers is also doing a very good job to be the fastest TCR car in his Audi RS3, car number 121. Again, tail lights disappearing into the mist coming out of turn 7 now, and about to head to what would normally be a very fast corner at turn 9 in the dry, but you cannot afford to run too far out wide onto the curbs, because curb will quickly become gravel trap and then you'll not recover the car. And if you cause a red flag, that makes it oh so more difficult, because you're going to have outside assistance, and likely the car will even have to miss the next session. 45 seconds to go on the clock. It is the 121 Audi that is fastest in... No, change that. Holmgard Motorsports Cupra Leon Competition with Roy Edlund at the wheel. Car 102 now becomes the fastest TCR car in qualifying segment 1 as we head to Diana Binks once more in the pit lane.
I'm with Stephen Cho from Atlas BX Motorsports. Stephen, you are at the bottom of the times at the moment after that first part of qualifying, but what was your strategy going out? Because you came in and parked up a little bit earlier before that session ended.
It was really just to get the minimum laps in. You know, we haven't even started the 24-hour race. It's a long one. With the conditions, it's a lot of water on the track, and so with the changeable conditions, we're just trying to keep it as safe and conservative as possible.
We can see that the conditions are very, very tricky. As you said, a 24-hour race still to come, 2 more parts of this qualifying session to get underway. But how did the car feel? I know you were taking it easy, but how did the car feel from your perspective?
Actually, I haven't been in the car yet. My partner TK was in the car. It says there's a lot of standing water and a lot of big rivers here and there, and so it's quite tricky out there. And so for the bold and the brave, you know, it might be a good day, but we're just focusing on the end of the race. So.
And what's the sort of strategy for you now for the next 2 parts of qualifying?
JK will be in the car next, and I'll be going in for Q3. And so, as I said, you know, of course, you know, we'll try to put some heat in the tires if possible, but we're not thinking about anything. So, you know, we're happy to start at the back as long as we're there at the finish. So.
Stephen, thanks for chatting to us.
Stephen Shue with Diana Binks, in and out that interview because she was deep in the bowels of the Atlas BX Motorsport garage, but the South Korean team with their Mercedes-AMG GT4, car number 403, has done a time of 2:27.962. That's presented in the first qualifying column, but also it's repeated in the average because we've only had 1 time yet for each car, but obviously that average will either increase or decrease depending on how many more times and of what sort are posted. As cars continue to cross the line, Roy Edlund improved again there with an absolute best, and that's quite possibly an absolute best compared to the GT4s as well in the 3rd sector. So a 2:16.445 is only 1.3 seconds slower than Max Partl's time in the GT4 BMW.
And I'll tell you for why. Not only has he become accustomed to the track, but actually it is getting, when I say brighter, I sort of mean less dark out there over the circuit. It's still raining a little bit, but actually even now, even for the next 2 sessions, there's still going to be water running across the circuit, and the most important information these 7 drivers have been out to impart is where the rain is, where the water running on the track is most likely to catch you out. So we're going to see more cautious laps at the start of the 2nd qualifying session, but that was very, very impressive from Roy Edlund indeed. At the end of the session, 1.3, 1.2 seconds down on the fastest of the GT4 cars. But Hofer Racing by Bonk with Maximilian Partel, they did a large number of laps. They did 4 very quick laps in a row, and their best nearly 0.02 of a second better than their previous one. 2 minutes 15.197 seconds. That tops the charts. I do sense we might start to see slightly faster times in Q2 and Q3. The clouds very dark indeed, are moving overhead, but the water is still going to be down on the track. So I think the improvement in times will largely come down to the greater ranking levels of the drivers who take over and do second and third sessions.
Yeah, and the closer they are to the sharp end, the closer we are to the final few minutes of the third session. Is the ante going to be upped a little bit with less risk, perhaps? Because if they've already got a bank of time, then you do have to throw it off in the third session. It's less of a concern, although you want to get a straightish car for night practice, which is also held today. So Max Partel with a 2:15.197 in the 431 Hoffa Racing by Bonk Motorsport BMW M4. The Cupra Leon competition driven by Norwegian Roy Edland after a couple of seasons now, a number of seasons actually, stretching across 5 with Holmgard Motorsport, and principally all in their TCR cars. But the Cupra Leon competition doing the business in car 102 for the early stages. And Bugira ZM Racing and their Mercedes of Jaromir Jiric 416 is currently second fastest with that AMG GT4. We can get a little bit more reaction after just one of the 3 qualifying sessions with Binksy once more.
5 Baskuten car. Josh, you've just jumped out of the car. The first thing you said to me was, oh my God, it's really difficult.
It's really slippery, and there's a lot of water standings everywhere. So for me, it was the first time driving in the rain in that car. So it was really difficult. It was not only surviving.
Was it a bit of a scary experience, to be honest?
Yeah, it's scary, but I've made it. So I'm happy that the car is back in the pit. So yeah, I'm very happy with it.
What's the biggest thing you've learned from that session? You said you've not driven that car in the wet here.
I've learned with this car that it is very difficult, but different with the normal car I'm driving. Normally, we do with a lot of guys old cars driving, old racing cars from 1966, and this is a whole other experience. So it's really different, and you have to find the same way normally, but now you can go early on the throttle, but and the brakes are better. But it stays slippery, and that makes it dangerous. You think, oh, it's going okay, and then suddenly there's a lot of water, and the car is going another direction. And so, for me, it was really new experience, but I had fun.
What was the trickiest part of the circuit?
The trickiest point was between the first and the second corner. And corner, I think it was 8, because there was water going everywhere, and you were driving, and then suddenly the car was going to the right or to the left, and you didn't know where it was going. So that was for me the difficult part, but for the rest, yeah, I managed to stay on the track, and I'm happy for that.
Good to talk to you, Josh.
Okay, thank you very much.
Quite a character there, Jos Stevens, but also very insightful in terms of where it's really tough, and you've got to fully focus in on not losing the car, because it's a massive gravel trap as well between turns 1 and 2. And by the sounds of things, I mean, you're at a reasonable velocity, understating matters there, at the end of this long start-finish straight. And turn 1 has always been crucial, even on a dry lap, but that's where it's wettest, that's where I suppose it's lowest as well, so a lot of the water accumulating there.
But in many ways, I mean, you could really hear that sigh of relief. I did it. But it's not about being quick through turns 1 and 2 and then starting the lap or wrecking it in the final couple of corners. It's about just keeping it on the island. And I must say, all the drivers must be thank goodness we don't have that chicane between the penultimate and final corners anymore, because that would have just been a massive opportunity to either going away from you under acceleration as you're coming out or sliding on the way in. So 14 turns around the circuit, 4.657 kilometres, sort of as it was in 1991 when it opened up, albeit with rivers added, just for fun. But the thought of turn 8, where Bob Stevens was talking about, that's the one you've turned behind the paddock, you're now going up the hill to turn 9 at the crest, but you're trying to put the power down, you're trying to turn a little bit to the right, but the fact he said the car could go left or right, well, that made it fun, didn't it?
24th edition of the 24 Hours of Barcelona, the Trofeo Femi Velez, didn't run in 2020 for obvious reasons, but has otherwise been a staple part of the Barcelona calendar since 1998, but it's been only the last 12 years where it's been part of the 24H series calendar and therefore run by the Dutch organisation Creventic. So ever since they partnered up with the organisers of this race under Creventic, it's been the track with the chicane. So this is a first Grand Prix we worked out earlier on, 2007, to operate with the chicane around about turn 13 on this configuration. So it's going to be interesting for me how the race pans out. There's less reason for incident, therefore, and hopefully it means we're going to have green flag and for longer too. We've already nearly had 4 minutes of this session though, Bruce.
Yeah, looking at Jaroslav Yanis running in the Bagheera ZM Racing Mercedes, that's running second in GT4. And get this, the championship leaders, which is Atlas BX Motorsport, the largely Korean team, they've got 164 points, just 2 more than Bagheera. But Jaroslav Yanis, you'd expect with his experience and his natural pace, he'd pick it up. But on his outlap, he's finding where the front wants to go and sort of hanging on in that Mercedes. But looking at the pace at the moment, he seems to be the fastest driver. But what's the point of doing it in your first lap? You've got 15 minutes to sort of find the sweet spot and not throw it off. But even now, I sense the conditions it's brightening up a little bit from sort of dove grey to pale grey, but certainly it's going to be dry for any of these sessions for the GT4s and the TCRs. It's about not getting things wrong.
We were chatting to Jos Stevens, and Bob Stevens is now in that car, the 125 Bas Kooten Racing Cupra TCR. So that car, having already banked a 227.329, puts it third in the TCR category. Max Partl's time from a little earlier on in the 431 BMW, 2:15.197. Now, it still says Max Partl's name next to the 431. That surely must have changed for this second session because everybody else's name has switched over. So need to flick on the driver ID for that.
Certainly fastest at the moment is the Bagheera racing car, Jaroslav Yanis. Well, he's now the first one round. He's Atlas BSX, and JK, as they Stephen Cho called his teammate, Yong Kim, is now top 2 minutes 15.8, so that's right up with the pace from the first session, bar about half a second, so he's really getting it together. But likewise, Jaroslav Yanis, when he comes around, I think will go to the top of the table as far as the second of these qualifying sessions is considered.
So if we assume it's not Max Partl in the 431, which has just gone quickest again, 227.4, it's either going to be Martin Kroll, Michael Bonk or Michael Meyer. But as yet, it's a bit of a guessing game there. Not everybody, unless you've decided to tackle this race with only 3 drivers, and some teams have. Otherwise, the 4 and the 5 driver lineups, there's going to be a couple of drivers who will miss out on taking part in qualifying. This is still a relatively new format where it's 3 drivers having to input into where the car will start on the grid for tomorrow's race, which is a midday start, tomorrow and Sunday's race, strictly speaking. And some of the drivers in the paddock saying kind of like a 12 o'clock midday start for a 24-hour race. It feels like there's less to go. Certainly when you get into day 2, there is, but there's a long way to go until midnight. Conversely, the 403 barely straight at any point through turn 6, 7 and 8 for the second fastest Mercedes AMG GT4. Jaroslav Yanis for Bagheera ZM Racing goes across the line, 2:13.6 and jumps up. So that's a 2:18 and a 2:13, making a 2:15 in total, or aggregated. And therefore the 416 car is fastest. Yeah,
and fastest on aggregate by 5 and a bit seconds. That was a fabulous attacking lap, already 1.5 seconds quicker than the best lap set by Max Partl in that first session. Have we still got Max keen to be out in the second session, or have we had the name flip over? No, that car is still with the Partl on board. We did that fabulous job for Hofer Racing, but that hopefully will flip over shortly. But we now know we're down into the 2 minutes 13s, and certainly the pace of Jaroslav Yanis. It was clear on the outlet that he was quite happy to push on. He's got the experience of where the water is now lying, brackets everywhere, but deeper in some places than others, and picking up the pace. In TCR, it's still it's now Tom Clerc, Home Guard Motorsport. It's still there by the dint of that first session time, but a good aggregate for the team there. Home Guard Motorsport, as I said, they've got a very, very comfortable lead in the TCR class and effectively just have to go out and finish the race. But when you've had such a successful series and season, what you want to do is finish the season with a class victory.
Jong Kim again with a big moment in the Atlas BX Mercedes, tail wagging heavily, but it was neatly controlled, needed to get out of the throttle so that the end didn't continue to pivot round. That's the 102 of Tom Chloe for Holmgaard Motorsport. This is the quickest TCR car with a combined time of 2:19.4 exactly.
Well, the good thing that needs pointing out for Jong Kim, fourth fastest on aggregate, but bear in mind one of his team drivers, TK as he's called, Taikun Yang, came in early, and therefore their first qualifying session time was not very good at all. It was the slowest lot, so building on that, it's harder to improve when you get the 2 times added, and of course when we've got the third session we'll add the 3rd time, so the aggregate should keep on moving up. But certainly very impressive from Atlas BX Motorsport. But then again, they are leading the GT4 class in the championships. They should be right at the sharp end of the field.
6.5 minutes of this session still to go, and Jaroslav Yanis, who's the second driver in the Bulgaria ZM Racing Mercedes, is currently quickest. Initial time being set by Jaromir Jiric, and it is 4 drivers of the Czech Republic together with Alia Koloc that are combined for Bulgaria Racing, a name actually I know from European truck racing more than anything else, but they are branching out into GT racing more recently. And it's a big puddle of water at turn 2, pretty much at the turning point there. It's worthwhile steering clear of that actually and going a couple of lanes wider than you would naturally do in the drive.
Yeah, naturally you would be going towards the left-hand side of the circuit. It's better to brake a little harder and turn in a little bit more sharply to be on the right-hand side, which is slightly higher as the track is marginally cambered down to the driver's left, and then sweep into turn 2. Anyone running deep, which is that where they would have been every time they've been here before in the dry, yeah, you could be that chump in the gravel.
So 5.5 minutes to go. Are we going to see any of these cars heading into the pits short of time? Because again, the risks, the stakes are particularly high with one more session needing to be completed. If you've only done 2 times, then you can't get your 3-lap average, and therefore you will not be able to start from pole position. There have to be the 3 columns filled with some sort of times at least. 2:15.7 represents a best from Jong Kim, who was briefly in the fueling area then.
Yeah, he's now moving down the pit lane just to our left from our commentary position, so the sort of largely silver flanked Atlas BX Motorsport Mercedes is doing what they did in the first session, but it was a very impressive time to move that up the charts to 4th overall, so great job from Jong Kim. Car 121 still out around the circuit. Did we mention it was Felix Partel rather than Maximilian Partel who's taken over the Bonk Motorsport car? That's the car that's 3rd fastest on the moment, but his best lap is 2:27, so that's clearly nowhere near the pace of the other Partel, the Maximilian Partel there. So the lap times aren't improving enormously, but certainly Jaroslav Yanis can put in laps all the time under 2:20s, and not one of his rivals has even managed one, so he's doing a very, very good job indeed. But again, with that, he set that fabulous time, 2:13.6 seconds, and right now I think he's simply just trying to get more of a feel, more so he can explain to the 3rd driver who'll do that 3rd session. And in among the mix, of course, we haven't really talked too much about GSR Motorsport, the one Ginetta G56 in the GT4 class. And that's running 6th. It's running 4th of the 4 GTR cars. Its best time, its aggregate time is 2:23.8. The winning average at the moment in GT4 is 2:15.9. Some way off the pace, but for this crew of largely Lithuanian drivers, it's really just about experience. They might have experienced it before, but not in weather like this.
So Mindaugas Lietutkas is the current driver in 4:05 for GSR. Felix Partel's decided to head into the pit lane along with the Atlas BX Motorsport car. I think there will be a segment of the pit lane, even if you're not in the fueling area, which is labelled as F. So if you do a drive-through, for a couple of seconds it will say F in the pit lane column, effectively, even if the car's not doing fuel. Remember, has been long known now that 24H Series racing, you're not fueling at the front of the garage as you might be in other major series. Instead, there is a separate area of the pit lane cordoned off for fueling only, and it's done before you get to the team here at Barcelona. So in the race, dive into fuel first, and only then, if your car's potentially damaged after an hour-long stint or whatever, only then can the damage be addressed.
Yes, and turning into the pit lane is easy enough. You have the right line, you have to get down below the speed limit, but there's a fairly sharp right-hander off the pit lane to go into the refueling loop with 5 pumps ready and waiting, but clearly the cars don't need that in qualifying at the moment. What have we got left? Just over 2 minutes. Our time's improving, frankly, not at all, which is quite surprising. But again, I think caution is the byword. And
the typical sound in the background in a moment or two that you'll be able to hear is the pit lane hooter that gets very, very busy during code 60s whenever there is a caution out on track during the race. We haven't needed a caution like that so far in the qualifying session, but most of the cars are now heading into pit lane. One of the 2 survivors, Yaroslav Yanis, having done a 2:28.8 last time around, but he's back well and truly off. The 2:13.6 will stand as his best.
And just to give you an example of how incredibly wet out there it is, we don't know how hard it's raining, not as hard as it was earlier, but there was a massive water splash just as the drivers come into pit lane. We saw the TCR entry for Baz Curtin Racing, number 125, just as it goes past the end of the wall that sort of blocks off the refueling area. The water absolutely powering out of those wheel arches there. So still very wet indeed in the entirety of the circuit. 1 minute to go, and we still have nobody playing on the track there.
No.
All the cars are in. The last 2 cars passing the refueling area on the timing screen, as you pointed out, Johnny. Suddenly it goes right-hand side of the screen to say F, but then suddenly it turns to P.
Well, effectively, you could now scratch that 55 seconds that remain, because if anybody did decided to head out onto track, they're not going to be able to get around again to do a quick one. But I suppose it would be cruel to limit cars if they want to do some sort of testing lap, if you like. But why should anybody? Because they've all now parked up. They want to get their driver changes done nice and early ahead of the 3rd and final segment of TCE qualifying. But a chance now to reflect on almost the last 15 minutes of qualifying. Here's Diana Binks once more.
I'm with the 405 GSR racing car. Ruckus, you went out in the first part of that qualifying session. We can see conditions haven't changed, haven't improved. How would you describe it?
Yeah, actually, it's really challenging conditions, but on the other hand, it's very interesting to drive, you know. You need to find the driest line, you need to find where the rubber is and where the grip is. So you are always creative, trying to change the driving line and etc. so you can find a little bit of grip somewhere. And actually, there are some rivers floating throughout the track, so you need to be very cautious not to be caught by those rivers.
And what's the feedback from from the other driver behind the wheel? Have you been able to hear what he's had to say?
Actually, what I saw was he said that it was really harsh conditions. So I really admit that, you know. So, and now my son is driving, so he's a young driver, and I hope that he can be a little bit more flexible than us and find a little bit more of speed here. Yeah, but on the other hand, you know, all of us, we have the same conditions. So who is the best? Who has the most experience on these conditions? He's the winner of the qualifying.
And how would you describe this Ginetta? I mean, the livery on this Ginetta is fantastic. For people that can't see it, who are listening to us, it's green and gold. It looks like Harrods, actually, in the UK. That's what the car looks like when we look at it. Yeah. How would you describe it?
Yeah, actually, it's a very beautiful, very well-balanced car. It has very good potential to go very fast. The only thing is that we are still lacking a little bit of experience with this car because it's pretty new. We got it in the beginning of this year, but we didn't have much of occasions, much of races done yet. So we are learning many things, and I think these conditions are really good for us. So we learn new things here from it. But on the other hand, on the dry conditions as well as in these conditions, it is very well balanced. So you get a very good feedback from the car. You can balance your driving and etc. You just need to find a speed and courage in yourself, you know, to use all the tire grip and possibilities of the car. So that's the thing.
Because of the conditions for this qualifying session, or the 3 sessions that you have, is the qualifying position not important now?
Yeah, actually, it's always interesting to compete, but on the other hand, for the 24-hour race, the qualifying position is not that important. Nevertheless, if we are five places up or down, it doesn't change too much in 24-hour race. The race is very long, and yeah, so many things can be there and happen and so on, and how are the code 60s and refueling, pit stop strategies, etc., etc. So many things that I think that those several positions, they do not mean too much in this race. Of course, for the top contenders, it should be really important because when you are a little bit back, you are losing time gaining to your competitor, and then if the cars and drivers are really very equal, it is difficult to fight if you are further back. But for us, as we're learning with this car and we're not actually going for the top positions, with professional drivers, etc. So I think it's not that much important. Still, it's very fun to compete, and try to find, a better place.
Well, no doubt we'll catch you throughout the 24-hour race. Thanks for chatting.
Thank you very much.
That's Rokas Kvedaras with Diana Binks then, and feeling pretty buoyant ahead of what could be a difficult weekend, although if we get all of the worst weather out of the way and aside of the 24 hours itself, then I'm sure many drivers will be grateful for that. So he is in the GSR Motorsport Ginetta G56, which is currently in the GT4 category in 4th position. But it's Bulgaria ZM Racing with a combined aggregated time, 2:15.9. That is the best of the GT4 cars. We're still waiting for the go-ahead here, Bruce, for the final qualifying session for these TCR cars.
I must say, I did like your description there. He's feeling quite buoyant. Buoyant is something you most certainly need. But all the time, it's getting brighter here at the circuit of Barcelona, Catalunya. Of course, most of the drivers still sitting with their cars in the pit garages because they're not out in this final session for the combined classes, TC, TCR, TCX, GT4. So 7 cars coming out to play. What the average will go down to, we don't know. But at the moment, across 2 sessions, as you pointed out, just under 2 minutes 16. Bulgaria ZM Racing there, just 2 points down on Atlas BX Motorsport. Also Mercedes in the GT4 class. But it really is a case of letting the drivers learn how it is. The weather's going to be quite mixed all weekend, but I think it's going to be a fair deal better. We were promised rain at 4 o'clock today, and they enjoyed it so much they brought it in a couple of hours early. But the track still very wet wherever you look. But it really is a case of the drivers having to just remember that thing. That little river they forgot to mention can catch out one of their teammates on the outlet. But we know full well, certainly across the track between turns 1 and 2, certainly on the drifting down the hill from turn 9. Turn 8, it's very tricky indeed. That little right-hand kink, as drivers are normally accelerating flat out. But for the drivers leaving the pits right now, it's not about accelerating flat out. It's about going out and learning what is in front of them. Homeguard Motorsport in the TCR class, leading that class, second of all these batch of cars. So putting it to 3 of the GT4 runners, very impressive indeed. But that car, the Cupra Leon Competizione, it's a car that sort of almost feels tailor-made for this circuit, I must say.
Yes, agreed. Something about Cupras and Leon Competitions, their spiritual home, I suppose, although with a strong VAG connection as well. But TCRs have always gone well around here, and I suppose that is the real history of this event, starting as a touring car themed 24 hours, and then only more recent years have GTs slipped alongside and dominated then the results from that point. The programme always, and this year is no exception, details all of the winners stretching back to 1998, and it's interesting for me to compare the makes and models of cars. It's only in the last, I think, 4 years where we've had effectively double winners for both GT and TCR. That will become a thing of the past, though, from 2024 onwards, as the future of Creventic racing, a 24H series racing, is rather being sharpened, whereas before we used to have 2 very definite winners of each of the different events. You think about Dubai, where we needed 6 camels to take winning drivers and combinations to the podium. Well, TCE is not going anywhere, but they will be represented within the main body of the field now.
Just to let you know, as you point out, touring cars in the early years since 1998, but 2005, 2006, 7, 8 and 9, all victories for Seat Leon Super Copa, or a Cupra R in the first of those years. So really strong history here. But of course, time moves on, and they're now running in the TCR class. It is definitely getting quicker out there. The light is improving. Maybe it's the camera crews making magic with their cameras and picking out light from the darkness. But again, these are the outlaps. Target time to try and get the winning average to be top of these 7 cars. The mixture between TCR and GT4 is 2 minutes, just under 2 minutes, 16 seconds. And I do sense, do you not think, Johnny, looking out of the track, it looks just that little bit less wet rather than drier?
No, yeah, I agree. The sky is definitely lightening, and I wouldn't be surprised to see the quickest time of the 3 coming from this session, but still absolutely wet weather tyres required. And Hankook, thankfully, have brought a great stash of them. I don't know how many of those will need to be used in the race. The forecast tomorrow looks a lot more promising than today, but it depends whether a little bit more of the darker stuff, the green and stuff on the radar, will head our way for Sunday morning. And it is only Sunday morning we need to be concerned about, with the midday start and finish time. David Versecki in Bagheera ZM Racing's Mercedes is one of the first out from the pits, and in the quickest TCR car to date, it's now Magnus Holmgaard in car 102, the Cupra Leon.
Oh, still the driver switching. David Versecki to put the power on just a little bit early, way after he'd normally do it in dry conditions, and he felt the tail of the 416 Mercedes, the Bagheera ZM Racing car, the car that's 2 points down in the GT4 Championship. Get away from him, but he's banked that knowledge and is going to build on that next time around. Again, not driving the natural line. A lot of these drivers having to see where the water goes across the circuit, and again, buy themselves a little bit of space on either side, not going too far to the curbs on the outside, and you very seldom see cars in the middle of a track. But that's precisely what all our drivers are doing at the moment. David Versecki doing a very good job. I tell you, who's also absolutely flying, Wolf Power, the Audi, car number 121. Miklas Born, the young Swiss driver, he's doing a very, very good job. He's fastest of all those drivers out on the track. And at the moment, his car second in TCR, but with that sort of pace, he should be jumping up the order.
Yeah, the 21-year-old from Basel, who is silver rated, but always somebody to watch when he gets into GT machinery. So Miklas in the Audi this weekend, which is a little bit of a departure from his more recent racing, although AC Motorsport have been a team he's raced with in the past, and that's probably where the Wolf Power element of the link has come along as well. So there is Miklas in 121, currently second in the TCR standings. So 220.3 in the first session, a 224.9 for this car in the second session. We haven't yet had a meaningful time, 225.7, but that has not registered in the third qualifying column just yet for Miklas Born.
Yeah, it's like mystery to me. I was waiting for that to flash in, but certainly looking very comfortable, or as comfortable as any of the drivers can feel out there on a track that is still very, very slippery and still got rivers across it at various points where the cars will just go very light at the front end. The driver will do a little prayer and hopefully the car will get back onto a little bit of grip. Down into the first corner, the driver's braking much harder than normal and turning in rather more sharply to the right. At the moment, the car doing that is the one Ginetta, the car from GSR Motorsport. Did well because it didn't hit that puddle on the left-hand side, halfway between turn 1, where the track goes right, and turn 2 when it goes to the left.
The one thing we can tell you about the next group of 3 qualifying sessions for GT3, GTX and 992, those sessions have officially been declared wet now, so teams can prepare wet weather tyres. It seems an obvious thing to say, but until you get that message at the bottom of the screen, you can't officially get a stack of wet weather tyres to the front of the garage. You can assume that's going to happen, but yeah, everything has to be ticked off officially.
Right now, as it's getting marginally less wet, the TCR cars are the fastest. The 2 best times in this third qualifying session, 2 minutes 14.2 for Miklas Born in the 121 Audi from Wolf Power Racing, and just a second and a bit slower is David Versecki. Oh no, he's now suddenly moved ahead of the TCR class cars in GT4, 2 minutes 13.9. So that's getting close to the very best time, which was set by one of his teammates. So certainly Bagheera ZM Racing looking very handy. And the best time, of course, was in session 2, Yaroslav Yanis. So it's getting faster and faster. This will be one of those sessions where I think they will stay out right to the end, because it's certainly getting more competitive, and they're trying to improve on the aggregate across all 3 sectors. So if your first driver wasn't notably rapid, you've got a bit more work to do.
Well, if it stops raining, which I'm not convinced it has done, but the track still has the chance of getting a little drier in places, and that's another reason why you stay out for the bitter end. And also, where's your car going to be placed when the checkered flag's about to come out? Because if you cross the line seconds before it, then that means you'll have forced an extra lap out of the session, and that could be oh so valuable. as the track continues to, well, not improve, but get slightly better, so that your car's not constantly squirming around and trying to find the nearest barrier.
Well, the person with the best chance of doing that is the driver of 102, Homeguard Motorsport, Magnus Homeguard at the wheel of that. He's just done the fastest lap of qualifying so far, 2 minutes 13.3, which has put his car, which has got a very good aggregate across the sessions, up to 2 minutes 17.3 on aggregate, but it's still the GT4 car of Bagheera ZM Motor Racing that's leading with an aggregate of 2 minutes 15.271. So that's 3 very good sectors from them, 3 very good qualifying sessions added together so far. But 102 first on the track, and lap after lap is picking up the pace. The track is drying, and Magnus Homeguard doing a fantastic job in that Cupra Leon Competition.
38.9, the fastest of anybody, so including the GT4s from Magnus currently at 2:13.3. His nearest teammate to that is about 3 seconds away, 2:16.4, but in much, much wetter conditions, so unfair to compare like for like. As the 102 now is very cautious through the dip at turn 7, again where a lot of the water is accumulating on the apex of the left-hander. There's a little kink at turn 8, not really well, it is a corner as in you need steering input, but you continue to accelerate and pull another gear through there, and then maybe a faint lift towards turn 9.
Well, Miklas Born is now going even faster. His car's sitting 4th overall. That's not down to him. His pace has been very good. He's slower by just half a second than that great lap put in by Magnus Homeguard. David Rosecki, top of the chart, so still Bagheera ZM Racing, but it is starting to close up. On aggregate, it's 2 minutes 15.0 from 2 minutes 17.3, which is Bagheera ahead of Homeguard Motorsport, GT4 ahead of TCR, but Miklas Born is going to have something to say to this. Certainly that number 121. Wolf Power Racing Audi is going faster and faster. This lap could get down into the 2-minute 12s. Nothing in dry conditions, but in the wet, a lot of bravado is required. Just under 6 minutes remain, and the young Swiss driver definitely pressing on, starting Johnny to believe he can go a little bit closer to the white line on the outside of the circuit. And of course, that naturally has to be the more natural line for drive take.
Yeah, but where possible, stay off the paint, because it is going to be so treacherous and could very easily flip the car around. So he does exactly that, staying off the red and white curbing. Although, interestingly, the car behind, happy to straddle the white line and drop left side Hankooks well over the curb there, where I'd imagine quite a bit of water is gathered as well, depending on how deeply they are ridged. Whereas Miklas Born just slightly over the rise, heading by the blend line, which you can ignore in one direction when you're on the racetrack, but you have to stay to the right-hand side when you've been in the pits and are rejoining. Well, again, staying off the water there was Miklas Born, and good traction off the corner.
I was about to say that's a fabulous lap, 2 minutes 11.6, no taking it away, but that's slower than the best of the GT4 cars in this third qualifying session. Stephen Cho, we heard from him talking to Diana just during that first of the 3 qualifying sessions. His Atlas BX Motorsport car now up to 3rd overall, but he's done a 2-minute 11.2 second lap, so that's certainly given his team a helping hand. But remember, they were the first car to pit in the first qualifying session, and they're having to build on a 2-minute 27 second lap in that session, where most of their rivals were building on something around 2 minutes 16, 18, so it's a real setback. But certainly Stephen Cho, very, very impressive indeed in the number 403 Mercedes. Great race livery, looks fabulous in the sunshine, so I'm told, but right now in the murk it's rather blending into the grey atmosphere here at the circuit in Barcelona.
Again, happy to get the tail out though, Stephen Cho, so putting on a bit of a show, you might say, in the 403 car. I know, awful, but get the really bad ones out of the way before we actually reach race weekend. That's always my excuse. 2:11.289. I could have gone show boating in these current conditions.
Save it.
Yeah, all this good material. Atlas BX Motorsport, then, that time is sort of easily lost when we have this aggregate format to the screen, but important to remember the crucial, and there's a lot of close times there in the 2:11s. 2:11.6 from Miklas Born, 2:11.6 from David Vasecki as well for Bagheera ZM Racing, but it's not greatly affecting the average times, because the 2:14.5 as a combined effort is easily the best. That time is 3 seconds clear, pretty much, of Magnus Holmgaard and the Holmgaard Motorsport Cupra Leon.
Yeah, hard to tell where the next improvement's coming from, but certainly Miklas Born is rattling in quick lap after quick lap. He's his car sitting in the lead at the second of the TCR class. The bragging rights still, because Magnus Holmgaard was the first driver out of the pits. He is just going between turns 3 and 4. So he's partway around this lap. Cooper Leon Competition second on aggregate, but now we've got 3 drivers in the 2:11s, one in the 2 minutes 12, one in the 2 minutes 13, and the car that's having the most trouble at the moment is bringing up the rear, Bert Metz in the Baz Coton Racing Cupra. That's car number 125. That's at the bottom of the charts. But that said, most of their drivers are very similar in terms of overall pace. But this is qualifying. We're going into a 24-hour race. But right now, it's all about really just knowing what it's going to be like should there be heavy, heavy rain. But for all these drivers in the 3rd qualifying session, at least the conditions are improving marginally. But it's still wet at every single point on the circuit.
And you want to be running ideally on your own as well. As very nearly running out of road there was Miklas Born. He had to reapply the brakes, realising he was going to go sailing off into the scenery had he not arrested the speed of the 121 car. Still, though, keeping things on the straight and narrow and realising this could turn into the best lap of the session. As down towards the first corner arrives David Vasecki, whose main experience over the last decade or so has come from the FIA European Truck Racing Championship with his connections from Bugera ZM Racing. They will have raced a number of times here as well as a venue, but a double champion in the European Truck Racing Championship, changing disciplines in the last couple of years more towards GT4 racing.
Well, he's the first driver into 2-minute 10s, but he's not going to be the fastest of all for long because Miklas Born, we saw him have that slide just as he came out of the first sector. He's fastest in sector 1, fastest in sector 2. And at the moment, sitting second in TCR. That's not all his own work because he's building on the work of 2 rivals, but this should be a lap that ends up in 2 minutes 10 seconds or possibly even below that. He's sweeping through the final corner, number 121, very impressive. All Power Racing Audi being picked up by the camera crews as he comes through that final corner over the rise. It's a rise to the crest of the start-finish straight, then dropping down towards turn 1 and just waiting for that time. 2 minutes 9.183, so he's fastest in the session by 1 3/4 seconds, but it still keeps his car in 3rd place overall. Needs to find another second, or what he needs to find 3 seconds to gain a second on aggregate, and he's giving it a go, but with 44 seconds on the clock, this is his last show. But that's been a very, very good job from Miklas Born.
Making up for the lost time, you might say, because his teammate setting a 2:20.3 and a 2:24.9 respectively. So to be well over 10 seconds like for like. The weather's had a say, no doubt about it, but we shouldn't overlook Miklas Born's talents as well to master these halfway house conditions that probably aren't changing a great deal, but nevertheless you could always be caught out by maybe a bit of standing water that you didn't spot last time around, with the difference in heat outside of the windscreen to inside, where a hot and bothered driver is no doubt generating some mist on the screen as well. And then if you find somebody else within the session, it's possibly unlikely because of the amount of cars that are circulating at the moment, but when that does happen, you're then going to be in their spray, which will be a massive hamper for the final bit of the session. A checkered flag's out. It's not actually been, or nobody has greeted it just yet. One car already in the pit lane is the Hoffa Racing by Bonk Motorsport BMW. Michael Bonk bringing that in pretty early to be the slowest of the GT4 cars when you combine it, but by only 4/10. And again, the age-old argument, does it actually matter where you're going to start for a 24-hour race? When we get to the next group of sessions, I would actually say more so, yes, because you're going to be right at the front versus mid-pack, where it could all kick off in the first corner when we get going.
Well, looking at drivers who are still pressing on, the second fastest driver in this session, but top on the chart across the 3 qualifying sessions, David Vasecki, even with the checkered flag out as he goes on up the hill. Has he taken the checker flag? Not yet. He was the last driver through in that 416 Mercedes from Bugera ZM Racing. It continues to press on, front washing away. He's fastest of his run in the first of the 3 timing sectors. And obviously the cars ahead of him on the track are going to pull into the pit lane. The conditions continue to improve, but I don't think anybody's going to go faster than that fabulous lap of 2 minutes 9.183 set by Miklas Born. He's taken the checkered flag. Waiting to see what David Vasecki can do. He's in the middle of the 3 sectors, just going down the hill to turn into turn 10 now, looking for traction. Well, it's down there somewhere.
Yeah, kind of a little bit of it there, lap ago, so let's have faith that the track will offer the same amount of grip as it did 3 or so miles previously. And a wider line being taken by the Holmgaard Motorsport Cupra, heading now towards the latter stages of this lap. So we're just waiting for David Vasecki. This 102 car is already across the line to cement that pole position which it had already had really in the bag for a good 5 or 10 minutes, with a second not looking like a lot, but your point, Bruce, about needing to find an awful lot more to then bring the average down. David Vasecki did improve on that final tour, a 2:10.355. Not an absolute best, but nevertheless a best for that 416 Mercedes AMG in the GT4 category. So it's a 2:14.0 as the aggregated time.
Yeah, that gives them an advantage of just 3.1 seconds over the best of the TCR cars, which is Homeguard Motorsport, as Johnny just said, the number 102 Cupra Leon Competizione. And then they, in turn, have the best part of a second over Wolf Power Racing. As brilliant a job as Miklas Born could do, he could not add enough or reduce the lap average enough on aggregate that his teammates left him. But takes that third place overall, second in TCR class, second in GT4, fourth overall. Stephen Cho, good solid job for Atlas BX Motorsport. So they're very close, but you know what we had there? We had 3 qualifying sessions and we had 7 cars going out 3 times each, and they all kept it on the black stuff, and the conditions certainly were stacked against them rather than for them. But just 7 cars. Johnny wondered if there'd be a dry line. Absolutely no chance of that happening. But when we get everybody else going out to play, I think we will get a dry line, probably by the last lap of the third of the qualifying session. So that gives Joe Bradley and Ben Constanduras, when they take the hot seats, and they are probably quite hot after we've been sitting on them, they will have plenty to talk out. But there it was a really intriguing battle, and you could see the different approaches, Johnny, as the various teams in the TCR class, the GT4 class did. But what they did, they all had caution as their byword, thank goodness.
Very little to do in, at times, less than the advertised 5 minutes between each of those sessions, so you can't really adjust the car a great deal. Just enough time to get the outgoing driver unbuckled and safely out. There's an excuse to actually try out a driver change there as well, and they will have been practiced over and over for the race this weekend, but always useful to get that done a couple of more times too. But that's it really, and then you're sent out. You might be able to pass a few instructions, a bit of advice where all of the worst standing water is, and the driver is then left to their own devices. But we didn't have any huge offs, we didn't have any spins actually, and credit to all of the selected qualifying drivers therefore, because it was important to survive those 3 sessions. And if you got a decent result, like the 416 in GT4 for Bagheera ZM Racing, and like Holmgard Motorsport in TCR, all the better for that. Diana Binks has been in the pit lane. She's got another update for us at the end of, official end now, of TCE qualifying day.
We are with the pole sitting team, and Jaroslav Yanis is here. We're just waiting for the car to come back in. Interesting sessions, the qualifying with the wet weather conditions, but you seem to be quite comfortable in that second qualifying that you had it in the bag.
Yes, I have to say it was quite tricky qualifying, all of them. Basically the qualifying too for me was pretty tricky because at the beginning it was a bit raining, but then all of a sudden already from the second lap was starting to getting more, and we were expecting it's going to be even more water. So for me it was quite tough to make it at the beginning, but anyway, I just tried my best. We pushed, the car was pretty good for the 1 lap, and after that there was no more actually chance to improve. But for me it was enough that I made it at the beginning, and then on the end it worked out for us.
How would you describe this Mercedes car as a race car?
Well, on the water it's pretty good. I really like the traction, so on this tricky condition you can have a thrust on the rear axle, so you can go really and hammer it, let's say. And it's a bit of tendency understeer, which is okay on these tricky conditions. And it's pretty constant, which is also needed, so the drop of the tire is not so big.
This circuit here in Barcelona it can be a real challenge. Obviously, we've got changing conditions, I think, for this weekend, but how would you describe it?
Well, to be very fair, at the moment I never driven here on wet, so it's quite unusual, I would say, in Barcelona to have a rain, so it's a new experience. For the race, well, the main difficulties is the rear axle, basically, as we're expecting high temperatures, and I think pretty much all the teams will be struggling with the rear axle, so we need to really be sure that we make the car in a way of set up proper balance, that we can save the rear, and if we can do that and do the constancy, that will be the key probably.
It seems you have a really committed team here. I've been watching them during this qualifying session. They've all been round the screens watching every second.
Yeah, I think it's quite a crowded team. They really all enjoy it. They really love motorsport, and that's why we're all doing it. So I'm happy for them. I'm happy that we made it today, and hopefully we can make it in the race as well.
Congratulations to you all for that pole.
Thank you.
Diana Binks catching up with the car that went very nicely indeed in the GT4 category. We'll hear from Diana in a moment or two as well with reaction from the TCRs. But before that, 3 lots of qualifying across changeable conditions, and there were a number of highlights to check out. Well done to Bulgaria ZM Racing for their result as well. And that will decide the rear of the grid for the TCE entry. It's the final European race where we will have a TCE division as a separate category and therefore separate trophies, effectively 2 overall wins, both from that part of the order but also the GT series as well, as there will be a number of changes over the winter period. This is after much conversation between Creventic, the organisers of the 24H series, and their customers, the teams and the drivers, as to what needs to be reassembled, rethought perhaps over the winter period, and the revamp that is listed in the programme. Too much really to mention, but at the end of 2 completely separate championships are drilled down into being one focused on the main title, but there will still be, of course, the subcategories as well, and a new TCCR class for the slightly more sporty touring cars. So pit lane's going to be open at, well, around about now actually, for the next session. So we are already behind time, and this an effort to try and catch up with the delayed proceedings so far. We'll also be rotating our pit crew as well ahead of, let's hope, predominantly dry conditions, although actually what we need to do first see is the rain stopping, and then we can start to think about a drier line. More cars in the session will surely help the situation, and moments away from the green flag, I will leave you in the capable hands with early thoughts from Joe Bradley.
Thank you, Johnny. Yes, what a very wet track we have. Yes, the weather is clearing up. The sky is less grey, but there is still a lot of surface water out there, and you can tell that by the amount of spray that the tyres are kicking up. So nowhere near any sort of dry line appearing, nowhere near any sort of track evolution being produced out there. So still a very wet track ahead of the GT classes. Let's head down to the pit lane where Diana Binks has got someone to talk to.
I have, yes. I've just come up to the other end of the pit lane, and the TCR pole sitter was just having a photo opportunity there as well while I wipe this close my hair. A tricky qualifying session for you, but you're happy to get pole position to start this weekend's event?
Yes, of course. Very happy to get pole at this weekend because it's the last race for us in the Cooper. Next year, a new car. So yeah, definitely happy to be P1 last time.
How tricky were the conditions out on the circuit?
Oh, very tricky. I think the first and second quali was more tricky, but in the third quali that was a little bit more dry, I think, yeah.
What's your approach going to be for the race?
I think it's going to be a good race, and we have some new drivers, so I'm excited to see how they're doing tonight.
Okay. I'll let you go and enjoy that, and congratulations on that class pole.
Well, it was very well behaved, wasn't it, in our qualifying sessions for TCE? And we now have a much busier circuit for the front of the grid for the GT3 category, the GTX category, and the 992 category, which forms our most populated field of 13 cars. A handful to get these cars around this Barcelona circuit in these kind of conditions. My name is Ben Costanjuris, Joe Bradley alongside me. 3 sessions, much like we've just seen in TCE, with the least experienced driver getting the better tyre at the start of this session. And they have all kind of left a little bit of space in between them. They haven't got out too much in big bunches, but there has been an urgency at the head of the field to get out early, and there's quite a few cars heading down the main straight right now to start their laps.
Yeah, I would have lost money on that TCE session, Ben, with the GT4 cars and TCR cars sharing the track in what was very, very, very bad conditions. A lot of standing water, but literally rivers of water. And for all of those drivers in all 3 segments of the qualifying to stay on track was quite incredible. A little bit different here. We've got a little bit of a busier track. 32 cars should be coming out. We've got 31 cars have left the pit lane. So a little bit of let's say a little bit busier out there on track for the cars to potentially trip over one another. Let's hope they don't, and we don't see any red flags.
Yeah, so 12 cars in GT3, separated in 3 separate categories. The GT3 Pure category, which just has 1 car, the 76 IMSA LS Group Performance car. Then we have the AM category, which is made up of mainly AM or AM Plus drivers, and then the Pro-Am category. And we have 5 GT Pro-Ams and 6 GT3 AM cars. Then we have the GTX category. There's a single category of mixed different vehicles in there. We've got the favourites, the Vortexes. We've got a Porsche 911 GT3 Cup car in there. KTM Expo, we just saw a Mercedes GT2 machine, a Lambi Huracan Super Trofeo, and the Mark V8 machine that we've seen quite a few times. And then the 13 Porsche 911 machines separated into 2 classes, 6 AMs, and which leaves us with 7 full-fat 992 category cars. And of course, the category is made up by the grading of the drivers. We are seeing the least experienced AM drivers in this first session, and then it is more open for those that have pro drivers to use them in Q2 and Q3. Now, we'd said 32 cars expected. At the moment, 31 cars on track, 1 car in pit lane, Joe Bradley. RPM Racing, I think was mentioned a little bit earlier, having an incident in free practice.
Yes, we saw that car being helped off the track somewhat. Tracy Crone at the wheel of that RPM Porsche, and that car going through, I think, potentially a reshell. I think they're about to swap motor and gearbox from their race car, checking the car over and doing a thorough job. That, all right, you know, the argument there for the RPM team is, yeah, we'll start at the back. It's a 24-hour race that we're about to encounter. So, you know, no harm, no foul. And thankfully, everybody fine, especially Tracy Crone, who was at the wheel. And it was a very heavy hit, Ben, very, very heavy indeed. And it's kind of written the chassis off, certainly for this weekend.
Amazing how many spare chassis knocking around the paddock, including for the CP Racing machine, who have multiple GT3 Mercedes that they can use in different categories of racing. Last weekend, doing 12 hours around the Nürburgring Nordschleife in the same livery, but not in the same chassis of vehicle. They come here with a different car. Sometimes we see the second car parked up in the back of the garage that can be used for spare parts when needed. And notice that Haas RT have a second Audi R8 LMS Evo sitting at the back of their paddock, and there are plenty of other teams with the similar philosophy.
Spare well-worn parts after 12 hours of the Nordschleife, eh? But CP Racing, one of the better prep teams out there, and that's why we expect to see the CP car running at the front at the moment. First time it's being posted. Not going to read too much into that, Ben. 2 minutes 5 there from one of our 992 cars. It's the number 903, and as I say, that Daniel Alleman out in the 91, the AM driver there for Herbert Motorsport, putting in a 2 minutes 5.3, and immediately gets demoted to second place. So I think, you know what, this session, Sky was beginning to see a break in the clouds. The break in the clouds disappeared, and we've got a constant shade of grey and dark grey now. So still raining, but the rain is reduced slightly, but it's still going to give us a completely wet track out there.
And they might be getting better in terms of their times because they're finding the better place to be on circuit. Oh, contact between the two cars. CP Racing going into the back of Red Ant Racing, the 903, and Hub van Eindhoven had just got himself fastest in the session so far. In fact, on his first lap, he was the best of anybody, and on the second lap too. Now, has that done any damage to the rear right?
I'd say so. We saw bits of bodywork dropping off the car there as the car pulled back onto the track, and heavy damage to the left front corner of the CP Mercedes. And it was a case of the CP Mercedes going through it, trying to get down the inside into turn one, the door beginning to close. And the problem here, of course, in these conditions, you can't necessarily see what's in your mirrors. And that was a clear example of a late apex turn by the 903 Porsche, and the Mercedes reading that as he perhaps saw, he's seen me, he's letting me through. Oh no, the door's closing on me. So two cars there damaged in that little instant. And what did I say, Ben? We've got 31 cars on the track and already seeing incident develop.
And that's Shane Lewis aboard the 85 machine right now. Is that damaged left front suspension? I'm not sure whether it is damaged or just with a lot of camber. Whilst we decipher that, let's go down to Nick Damon, who's now in the pits, and he has what sounds like a revving Porsche behind him.
Packing up and going home. They are going to try and get out onto the track for tomorrow's start at midday. One final point I'd like to make is I have a bit of advice for everybody who might come to a racetrack. If you come to a racetrack and you have a coat, don't leave it in your hotel room.
Cameraman, you need to pan down because he's also wearing shorts. He really has not set himself up today.
At least he brought it to his hotel. I left mine at home. Nick in shorts.
Unbelievable.
Wow.
We didn't need to see him dancing.
Yeah, he's got a great face for radio, actually, and great legs for radio also.
Well. Let's get back to racing, shall we?
Please do. The 76, the IMSA Group Performance Porsche, it's in the GT3 class, down to a 2 minutes 3.9. So we are seeing the track come to us, aren't we? We are seeing the times. But I think you were right, Ben. I think that's more drivers getting and becoming aware of where the grip is out there on the track. We're seeing the cars way off what we would call the textbook racing line. And that's because, quite frankly, there's more grip out there. It's the wet line is what we call it. And visibility being irksome for these drivers, both with wet weather across their windshields, and also what happens in these conditions in these closed-top cars are you get a lot of condensation. So if you've got inferior window blowers, then you are going to have a problem with condensation.
Nick, let's go back down to you.
With the 903, that's the Red Ant Racing, one of the Red Ant Racing Porsches, that has come in after its kerfuffle with the 85. Visibly, they have, as you said, cracked the rear bumper. That's about 12,000 euros. And a phone call to Stuttgart. They're having obviously now a check to see what the situation is with the rear right suspension. Now, they have slightly dislodged the brake ducting. That's not necessarily serious in this weather, to be honest, because they're not going to overheat with the amount of water. The amount of damage doesn't seem too bad. It's certainly not in any way going to stop them taking part. But, yeah. They're going to have to do some repairing. Now that's going to get a lot easier because there's now a red flag, and that's because it's absolutely tipping
Yes,
down.
it is, and also we've got the 929 car in the gravel. We just saw that just slithering off in kind of sympathy and following the Red Camels, Jordan 909. 992, both of them going into the gravel at the same time. Charles Dawson in the 904 Red Ant, the second car for Red Ant, 992. That's some nines there. Also facing the wrong direction. Most of them got themselves out of the gravel, but Anthony Lees in the 929 is stuck at turn 5 and is in a dangerous position. So red flag for this session. Clock stopped at 4 minutes. Session will be resumed. So they are going to continue with this portion of qualifying, and that is to say the drivers that are in the cars don't get out if you want and think you can do better. But with no cars circulating around the circuit, whilst they get that car removed from the gravel, it's only going to get wetter.
And as Nick described, it's now lashing down. The rain has increased. We're not going to see anyone get near a 2 minutes 3.8 or inside the 2 minutes 4s, 5s, as we've just seen. So whether or not it's worthwhile for these drivers to perhaps get back out there once we go back to green. And the red flag was to retrieve that Porsche in the gravel. It wasn't because it started to rain heavily. I think, Ben, the conditions are very reminiscent of how we started the TCE qualifying session. It's as wet as it was then, so that's not the causation of the red flag. It's to retrieve that Porsche. And once we get that car cleared, we'll go green again, and it's down to the teams whether or not they want to send their AM drivers back out in these, what I can only describe as pretty atrocious conditions and very, very difficult, as we're seeing.
So the 76 Lauren Hergon driven 992 GT3 car is the fastest car in the session so far, and is the only full-fat GT3 entered machine, so fastest and the only car in that class. Second fastest is Ube van Eindhoven, which was the 903 that we got assaulted from behind. Best in 992 class full-fat. Best in the AM category of GT3 is the third fastest car from that session, the Ferrari 296 of WTM by Rinaldi. Torsten Kratz driving that car. And then the best Pro-Am machine, Ivan Giacomo for Car Collection Motorsport in a Porsche 911 992 GT3 machine. Pro-Am category, fourth fastest at the moment. And the top four separated by just a fraction under a second. Best in GTX, the KTM Expo that we followed around the circuit, got 3 laps in. Dominic Olbert for Raison More Than Racing getting that particular time in. And everybody managing to get at least 1 lap in, apart from the 907, which we don't expect to see. Therefore, they have filled their quota in qualifying 1. Not sure whether the 929, Anthony Lees, will be able to get a time in Q2. Yes, if he drives back to the pits, just put another driver in, you can go again, can't you?
Lewis out of the 85.
So that car is being recovered from the gravel trap. Should be able to make its way around the pits in a few seconds. Let's go down to Nick, who's got CP Racing Shane Lewis, who was involved in that accident earlier on.
Shane Lewis out of the car. What happened?
Well, first, not my finest moment. I got to apologize to all the CP Racing crew for dinging the car, man. I've been with these guys. This is my 5th year with them, and the amount of scratches I put on the car, you can't count on one hand. So I knew, they told me, listen, don't take any risks on any chances. It's wet. I got down there, to be honest with you, whoever was in the other car in the Porsche, I wasn't really sure where he was going. First he was braking on the inside, and then he went far left, and I thought, oh, like he's just going to, I don't know, let me go or something. I wasn't really sure what he was doing. So I'd kind of checked my brakes at a couple of the corners. I picked my spot, I was on the brakes, and I just didn't anticipate him turning in like that. And in the wet, I just couldn't get it stopped at that point.
Very bad. Like, how bad are the conditions out there?
For me, they were pretty bad. I will say that traction down for me was the biggest issue. You know, obviously I got into the other Porsche under the brakes, but brakes were not our problems. For me, it was a power down thing. Conditions are pretty, they're pretty tough. I'm pretty impressed with how fast some of the guys were going out there. I wasn't trying to match anybody, but it's brutal out there right now.
Now, there is something I need to talk to you about, and it comes hanging over from Estoril. And Seb, you need to come back here, Seb, because it's very important, because you've made an effort, but they're not full Emerson Fittipaldi mutton chops, are they?
You know, maybe that's the karma for me. Maybe that's what it is they were, about 2 weeks ago, they were huge, like gigantic big ones. And
It's like when you arrive at a holiday, it was always hot the day before you arrive. It was always dry before you, so you had massive mutton chops, but what happened?
yeah, I decided to cut them back as I was looking pretty haggard out there, and I decided I would come back in my normal good luck sideburns and go from there.
Did you take any pictures of the big ones?
No, actually, I did not.
Well, they say no pictures, it never happened. Shane, bad luck, and hopefully they can get the car ready for the next couple of sessions. Thanks, mate.
Yeah, all for the CP guys. Thanks for making me smile anyway. Sorry to the Porsche I got into.
Work being done on that car, and it looks like it could well be ready for the second session. They're working mainly on the bodywork. Don't seem too concerned by the suspension.
Yeah, look, it did look superficial bodywork damage. I say superficial. It's harsh enough for the boys to have to go to work on the car and make some bodywork repairs, but they'll do a good job, and they'll have checked that suspension geometry for that, and they'll have checked tracking. If anything, it's going to be the tracking that took a hit, and maybe a steering rod, but that'll be the work of a moment. We're back to green, Ben. 3 minutes and 45 seconds now on the clock, and whether or not we see those times improving, the rain has increased. It's now heavier. We've got more standing water, and the cars, as you heard Shane Lewis say, these GT3 cars, very, very tricky to get the power down, and it's kind of eggshell under both the braking foot and your throttle foot, isn't it?
And these drivers are going to have to be on it as quickly as possible. They really only have 1, maybe 2 laps to improve on what they've managed to do before. There's a massive opportunity to improve if that first lap wasn't particularly strong. And bear in mind, we've got kind of across the top 20, nearly 10 seconds span cars that normally are within 1 or 2 seconds of each other. So there is the opportunity, but just look at the amount of spray coming off the back of that Audi.
I can't really see why any team manager would send his car back out now. There is absolutely no point.
Not when you've got another
whatsoever.
And red flag goes out again.
Once again, you know, we're the weather conditions, the track conditions are much, much worse than when we started this qualifying session. The thing, I would have parked the car up and sent my second driver out on what would have been his, you know, the second segment of this qualifying session.
I don't think quite a lot of by the looks of the time in screen, about half the teams
have agreed with me.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that's the Lithuanian Porsche that is in the gravel, I think. No, we've got another one.
Oh, that's the NKPP Porsche of
Guy Bessem.
Yeah, Guy Bessem, and
that's not the other one. That's 2 cars off them, because I'm sure I saw.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Did I see the Audi? Was it the Audi then? The 72? Yeah. So 72 is in the gravel somewhere, and session will not be resumed. So red flag of the Q1. And so cars will make their way back to the pits, and we will reset for Q2. Meanwhile, let's go down to Nick again. Lots of airtime, Nick, with the man who is the fastest in that session, a very experienced driver himself, Lauren Hergon.
Lauren, congratulations, fastest in that session. How difficult was it?
It was not difficult. The car was crazy. Yes, the feeling was very good. Just after the start, the feeling was very, very good. Good brake, the good balance of the car. So it was not easy because we drive with safe, but the car was very, very, very comfortable and very easy to drive fast on the track.
Has the team put a full wet setup on the car for this session? Is it?
Oh yes, of course. I think. Yes, of course. I think they put the full setup on wet condition. Of course, we work. The most funny, it was the first time for me to drive this car in this condition. So this car is amazing. I am so proud about that.
Have you done much racing at the Circuit de Catalunya before?
Yes, of course. So it was the first time with the GT3, but I participate at the European and French Championship in GT4. So it was. I am very happy. I am very happy. Sorry for my English. It's not.
Your English is much better than my French. Congratulations, Laurent. Now, you'll be pleased to know that they're taking off the wet setup and they're putting on the ARC setup.
Lauren Hergon, an incredibly experienced driver that is really responsible for Renault Sport's track division of cars over the last couple of years as their official test driver, whether that be the Megane Trophy car that we've saw 10, 15 years ago, or the Alpines that are supporting the category this weekend. Usually, you win a chance to drive with Laurent Hergon in GT4 by winning the Alpine Cup.
I was actually listening to you at lunchtime, Ben.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I remember. And wasn't he involved in the Formula Renault series in France when, as kind of a driver mentor, driver coach?
I mean, he's,
he's
the Renault Sport man.
If you look at actually his teammates, full all French driving lineup there, he's sharing that car with Simon Thierman, Gregory Guiver, and Julien Andlauer.
It's a strong team.
That's a very, very strong team. And when you consider the AM driver is Laurent Hergon, then, you know, you keep an eye on the 76 IMSA car.
And I believe that the reason why he's an AM driver is not to do with experience, it's to do with his age.
Which is experience, of course. If he's been driving his whole life. Yeah.
He's partnered with Alan Fuerte in the GT4 category this year as an AM category in GT4 European Series.
I mean, Alan Fuerte and that guy. Yeah, I mean, thank you very much.
I think Alan Fuerte's son is in the Alpine Europa Cup
here
races,
this weekend.
which are support races to this weekend,
Right. Bruce is saying no.
No.
Bruce covered the qualifying. We have got this session, the second segment of the session, delayed slightly. I think that's wise. We've got a lot of water out there and a lot of clear up to do. I'm a big fan of these 3 driver qualifying sessions, Ben. Endurance racing is all about the team effort, isn't it? And, you know, as we clean the track, I do like this because it's not all about your hotshot driver going out there and doing one lap. What we do is 3 15-minute sessions. You start with the AM driver. That's mainly, the reason for that is mainly in dry conditions where the brand new set of Hankook slicks would be optimized on, say, lap 3, and it kind of spreads the fairness across the field. Your AM driver's getting the optimized lap, and then the tyre kind of plateaus, let's say, for the next 2 drivers coming in, which is your silver or your pro or your you know, very quick bronze if you've got one. But then, you know, it shares the responsibility. You've got 3 drivers who are going to qualify in the best way they can, and that gives you the fastest aggregated time over those 3 segments, over those 3 laps. And so the responsibility is spread across 3 drivers. It really is a pure team effort, and I'm all for that. I love this. I do love this format of qualifying.
So Guy Bechtem has brought the NKPP Porsche back into the pits, and finally the Jutta 71 comes in. Jonas Karklis was the driver there, and that means all cars that were in the gravel are now back in pit lane, and we can get our second drivers into the cars. Be interesting to see, because there's a lot of drivers on the entry list. Most teams have gone with 5 drivers, but of course with only 3 elements of qualifying, you have the ability to select who you put in the car for Q2 and Q1, as long as an AM driver does Q1. So we're looking at Q2 and Q3. So we have an interesting selection for the teams to make. I mean, even our pole team right now, Julien Andlauer, a pro, Greg Gilbert, lots of experience in GT4, less experience in GT3. Simon Thierman, semi-pro, and then Laurent Hergon, the AM, but very fast. I expect to see. I'm not really sure who you would choose out of those 3 drivers.
No, I'm not sure. That's a great dilemma to be in that team,
right.
isn't it? The number 76 Porsche, the IMSA LS Group Performance, to give it its full title, it's a Porsche GT3 spec Porsche 911. But there are other teams that are going to come to the fore, and again, we're going to see as we get through the next 2 qualifying sessions, we expect to see teams like the Haas RT, Herbert Motorsport with their Porsche, the Haas RT Audi. Richardson Racing, I noticed, the British team, I'm not sure what the format of that team is. It's new to the series. It's here in the 992 class. However, they've clearly got a great lineup there in the number 906 in the 992 class, currently 3rd in that class.
Yeah, and it was James Littlejohn who is aboard that car in the first element of qualifying, who is a very, very experienced historic racer and has lots and lots of experience in various forms of historic cars. very rarely gets aboard a modern machine. So interesting to see how he gets on.
Ideal in these conditions.
Yes, exactly.
He needs to drive it like an historic car.
And also shout out to Richardson Racing, because they are one of the few teams that I've driven for in the world.
Get out of town.
Would you believe it?
In what series?
In Formula Ford UK, I did a race with them. And I think I drove
Same team
for them.
Same team.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it was run by Dad at that point, not by Andrew.
So you're a commentator now, so I'll leave everyone to their own judgment.
Well, do you know what? Do you know what I've just done there?
What's that?
I've done that classic commentator thing of, I used to race. You know?
Yes.
There are various others who will instantly mention their racing experience. I've waited about 50 minutes.
What, you're including the TCE qualifying as well?
No,
you've waited about 16 minutes, my friend. It's 18 minutes, maybe. Yeah, 18, 12. Oh no, that's not there. That's the time of day.
Ali Al Khalifa will join that team, and Charlie Hollings
yeah.
is the semi-pro in that car.
Yeah, Charlie Hollings, no slouch, is he?
So expect those two drivers, because Khalifa is an AM+, Charlie Hollings the semi-pro, David Waddington, the fourth driver in that car, is an AM. They could, I suppose, depending on whether they believe that the ratings are correct or not, or if David Waddington is a experienced elder driver, like we've seen from Lauren Hergon, also play. We'll have to see. But most teams have got at least 4 drivers with only 3 slots of qualifying. It's only Willie Motorsport, championship contenders, that have 3, and that's because their 4th driver is injured.
I mean, this wet qualifying session is certainly going to mix our grid up going into the 24-hour race. And considering this is the last round of the European Championship, and we will be crowning our champions for this year's 24-8 Series, European Championship on Sunday afternoon, it really is going to mix up the grid. For instance, we've got a 992 car, 2nd overall. The 903 Red Ant car is 2nd overall. We've got a 992 car, the Vili Motorsport by EB Motors at 955. No surprise to see it at the top of that class, but that car's 5th overall, 2nd in class, and the 3rd overall, the Richardson Racing car, a little bit further down the order, 8th overall. So the 992 car's really getting in amongst the GT3s, and that, as we heard Shane Lewis mention, is all about traction and limitation of traction. You just can't get the power down. So it kind of levels the field out. The less powerful 992 class cars are perhaps what is indicative of this first session is they're a little bit easier to drive in these conditions. And I say that in relative terms, of course, because everything is blooming hard to stay on the track there.
We do have a car on circuit, but it is a course car. I think Seat Leon has just exited the pit lane. I saw on the screens just a second ago. We're having a bit of a hold here because the rain really fell very, very hard just at the end of that session. It has now backed off slightly, but not a lot. There is the course car getting some experience, front-wheel drive, to see. It does seem as though everything's wet rather than, that sounds a stupid thing to say, but there's not rivers. It seems like it flows. It's got a very good way of drainage, which is surprising for a place that you wouldn't expect to necessarily experience this kind of rain very often.
Well, it's an FIA. Well, how many Formula One Grand Prix have we seen here in the wet? You know, there's some really memorable ones. Schumacher in '95, where he drove around in absolutely atrocious conditions. So this part of Spain, northern Spain, up towards the French border and up towards the Pyrenees, it does have weather. 96, I'm being told in my ear, not 95. I did say 95, didn't I? 96 was that atrocious weather. So the Circuit of Catalonia here, not a stranger to extreme weather conditions. And because of the location, we're on the coast of the Mediterranean, we're just south of the Pyrenees, so we're bound to get weather fronts. And the track, FIA Grade 1 track, are the highest standards. And, we see the drainage here on the track. At the highest standards of drainage, we've seen a lot. Can you imagine other circuits that we go to? I'm not going to name names, but other circuits that we go to, with the amount of water we've had falling, we'd be needing to brush the water off.
But even FIA Grade 1 circuits that we go to.
Well, yes,
there are, just the way that the circuits undulate would have massive rivers running across the track. It just seems... we haven't had close-up shots of particularly of the circuit, but it just seems like it's generally draining pretty well. That said, there's still more rain falling from the sky. This is not, by the way, expected for the rest of the weekend. Tomorrow up to 28 degrees, 30 degrees on Sunday. perfect for a late afternoon aperitif at the beach post-race, which is what a lot of these drivers and families will be looking forward to doing. And it is, you have to remember, the 24H series is all about the families, the family environment, the ability to share motorsport across a weekend for all and many who are business owners, businessmen, whose time is limited. And the calendar is built around going to beautiful places and having wonderful times for both driver and family alike.
That was the next generation of Hofer racing drivers that we saw there in the arms of Alex Prince and Chantel Crawler. She was now Chantel Prince. You know, they had a break from racing. They went off, had a family. I think they've got a couple of kids now, and we are absolutely delighted to see the Kroll family and the Alex Prince and his wife Chantal back. Former ladies champion here in the 24H series, back with their Mercedes AMG and back in this what is a very, very friendly paddock here in the 24H series. It's intensely competitive, Ben, but it's got an atmosphere quite unique across the world of international motorsport, where, you know, it's all about, you leave the intensity on the track. And back in the paddock, it's kind of airing. I love it. I love the diversity of the fields we get here, the different cars in the different classes, but also the kind of attitude and culture that is on that pit lane, where when we face adversity, we don't face it alone. And we know very much how teams have stepped in to help other teams that they're even competing with. They'll step in and help them get back on the track. And it really is. That's what I love about this 24H series.
So the director of the course in his Seat Cupra has just pulled into the paddock area, not the pit lane area, having done a lap of the circuit, which should have radio control to race control to report real time on what his experience has been, but has remained in the car for the moment. The rain hasn't change in its intensity whatsoever, and so I don't know what the conclusion is going to be here.
Yeah, there's no further messages coming through on the official channels, other than the last message was start of Q2 delayed, and that's where we are. I mean, hard for us to judge. Might have to. I know Nick is down there and Nick is in the weather. I'm just looking out the window and I can see how much rain is still falling. You can see the splashes in the puddles, Ben, and it's not holding up, is it? The sky's not really showing any promise as well. It's a darker shade of grey, so the weather fronts continue to come across. So yeah, we'll just wait. We'll wax lyrical, and we'll. Shall we talk about the championship? Because that is what this weekend is all about. It's all about coming here for the final round of the European Championship of the 24H series, and we will crown all of our class champions for 2023. And of course, our overall championship, the GT European Trophy, has come down to four teams in it. The Atlas BX Motorsport, BMW, where did I get that from? Mercedes, in the GT4 class, 164 points. Equal with them is the RD Sainz Lamborghini team, both on 164 points, and the Bagheera ZM Racing team, they're only on 162 points. 156 points, not that far away, is the 903 Porsche of the Red Ant car. Now that's for overall honours, and there's a mix of classes there. GT4 represented quite well, GTX is mentioned, and 992 going for overall honours, but it all comes down to the rest of our classes. I think there's only one of the classes where it's kind of almost done and dusted, and that's the TCR class, where if the Holmgard car continues round and finishes the race, it will take the championship. So that we will get a chance to talk to the teams. We've got a night practice coming up, of course, after this qualifying session. So 2 more of these 15-minute segments left. Still no news coming through from the officials as to when we're going to get things restarted. The weather doesn't look like it's promising to get things restarted very quickly, with the rain still lashing down.
Yeah, we just had a fire truck also doing laps around the circuit. So there's still investigations. Nobody's parked up and gone home right now. So there is an intention potentially to try and get this finished. But as you said earlier, we haven't had that break that we saw in the TCE session.
Yeah.
What we're going to do is take a quick break and look at pastures new and a slightly warmer area of the Creventic series in the Middle East. A reminder that we will be racing in the Middle East in December in Q8 and then the start of 2024 with the traditional start of motorsport generally, the Dubai 24 hours. And then following weekend, the 6 hours of Abu Dhabi in addition to the calendar to keep you busy in the Middle East over the winter. And make sure you get your entries in. That 12 hours of Q8, that brand new circuit last year, does look like a fabulous place to go racing. And that will be across the first weekend in December. So we've got the marshals out sweeping the circuit of its rain. It is still falling just as hard, though, so that could be a never-ending task. Meanwhile, let's go down to Willie Motorsport. They have a championship to win this weekend, and Nick Damon is there.
If you want to know how you get an interview, the answer is it costs 3 Kinder chocolates. Now, one, of course, goes to Seb, our fabulous cameraman, one of which is for me, and Joe and Ben can fight for the other one. Is that okay? Thought so. Okay, so with Simone de Castro, and of course the man whose name, well, his name isn't on the card, but his marital status is, Fabrizio Brugge. Fabrizio, how's the recovery going from your big accident in Monza?
2 days ago, I tried to get into the car, and unfortunately, it didn't go as I wished. Still too painful. It's going to take another month at least to recover from surgery to be able to get back into the car.
What sort of work are you doing to get fit? What's your kind of fitness regime?
Well, sincerely, being not that much, actually. I'm actually gaining weight and not doing anything right now, but usually, normally...
Right, I'm taking the Kinder Surprise off you then, if you're gaining weight.
Well, it's actually a very bad thing, but no, normally during race time, race period is run at least 3 times a week, plus the gym and a specific exercise for the neck. And then a lot of karting. It's always helpful, and the more you practice in the car, the better you go.
But then again, I suppose you're probably pleased not to be driving in this.
Absolutely. I actually was making jokes about it before, like, damn, I'm not driving right now. That's so bad. You know, after Spa, then here I said, like, I'm glad I'm not, I wasn't the first one on the stint. Sabi.
I mean, now...
ask Mr. Ferrero if you want to make a sponsor next year, please, Ferrero. Look, the email 10 years ago.
Well, as we know, yeah.
My a lot, but whole team is very serious to target, because we win 2 years ago with Fabrizio the championship, but every year is new adventure. And we won't work a lot to win with this fantastic team. It's very difficult, 24 hours, you start, and I don't know where...
I'll stop you there, because you're the only team with 3 drivers for the 24 hours. Everyone else has got 4 or 5. I mean, obviously, we know why you haven't got 4. Did you not think about getting someone else in at the last minute to come a 4?
Because when you the dream is 24-hour Le Mans. I don't know if this life we can go together.
What, you and me?
You make that?
Ha detto tu e lui insieme possiamo andare insieme.
Oh, together, yes. But
Because you know I'm there.
Yes.
I'm there every year.
I don't want to go to spectator, but driver. Fabrizio, thank you very much for Fabrizio perché thinking a lot to building the team is not difficult because there are a lot of mind, but him have this target. But now work for this weekend and after tell
the future. Thanks, man. So your aim is Le Mans.
It's every driver's dream to get there at least once in your lifetime. And we set last year with Rico Borghi at B Motors and with Willy Motorsport. And we actually this year started to define if you really want to be a team that deserves to get there, we need to start working differently. So we really put a lot of effort in it. As he was mentioning, it's different minds, different characters to be put together. But it seems like we are on a good path. So let's see. With new regulations, new car.
GT3 obviously coming into Le Mans as of next year, but I suppose it means you'll have to start doing the other series on the Le Mans calendar, won't you? You'll have to look at ELMS and you'll have to look at the Mans Cup and that sort of thing.
We aim next year another year of training at Creventic because I want to do a bit of advertising for Creventic. It's actually the best championship to train for endurance races. There is nothing that is similar. So next year we want to be here. We will be here. And we actually aim for 2025 to something else, or maybe the Winter Asian Le Mans Series 24-25. We will see.
It's a brave target. I mean, but apart from changing the composition of the team, and you say changing the attitude of the team, there's another thing you'll need, and that's large amount of finance. So, Mr. Ferrero, I mean, how difficult is it, do you think? I mean, how much are you already working on finding newer and bigger sponsors to get you onto the grid at Le Mans?
Yes, I am, and I actually hope that I will have good news already in this championship in the Middle East. I'm working on developing some relationship, so cannot obviously disclose right now, but hopefully that there will be more finance to go and trying my best and to get the finances and to work with the teams. Mr. Ferrero doesn't want. He said that motorsport pollutes, therefore.
So there you have it there. They're going to Le Mans. They've got a very wet race to run. And Mr. Ferrero, he's useless.
I don't know whether we've ever seen Kinder Bueno on a car. 32 years old, the Kinder Bueno chocolate made by Ferrero.
Is that Kinder eggs?
Same as, no, Kinder means child.
Yeah, but
Bueno means good.
I say Kinder eggs banned in the US.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Kinder eggs are banned in the US in case children put the toys that are inside the chocolate eggs inside their mouths. It's a health and safety issue. I just want to say, you know, I mentioned the culture of the 24H Series paddock, and I think there's none other team sort of epitomises that than the Philly Motors by EB Motors. And Fabrizio Broggi, back at Mugello in March, he actually won the Spirit of the Race Award for that team.
Yep.
And the reason he won the Spirit of the Race Award, because I couldn't think of a more spirited approach to going to Mugello and competing in the 12 hours than using your honeymoon to do it.
Yes.
And bringing your brand new wife to the track with you. And so where are we going on honeymoon, darling? I do.
Tuscany's lovely.
Let's go to Tuscany.
Yeah,
yes. Just forgot to mention the Mugello 12 hours bit. Tuscany, beautiful, yes. Oh, wine, great food, great country, great scenery, and a 12-hour motor race around Mugello. So great atmosphere in that team.
As you can see by the conversations and the plans that are going into where they want to aim for next, I think their feelings probably mirrored across the majority of the paddock. Not everybody is looking to progress. A lot in the paddock are just enjoying their motorsport. But as Fabrizio says, this championship, a fantastic way to rehearse and to understand endurance racing from a driver's perspective, the multi-class element being the most significant. You go single-class GT3 racing, yes, you do have to lap traffic, but it's not the same. You don't come across those cars at the same rate of knots as you do when you're at the Le Mans 24 hours, or have to look in your mirrors at the same rate of knots as if you're in a GT3 with a hypercar, for instance, breathing down your neck. That does exist here because the difference between TCE and GT3 is quite large. And so that allows these drivers to think in that mentality, to attack in that mentality, to drive a circuit with their brain totally open to the possibilities of other things happening around them. This is positive images. We just saw Fire Truck 2 leaving turn 5. And now another fire truck is, I think they were having a good hammer at a drain just before turn 5. This was where we saw, what, 4 cars in the gravel, I think, in the 2 red flag periods we've had. I wonder whether in the braking zone there, just where there is an opening in the barrier, there was quite a lot of attention there. It looked as though perhaps maybe a drain was not receiving the water it should, and that was catching out a lot of drivers in the braking zone. There is quite a lot of water flowing down that part of the circuit because it's one of the highest parts of the track.
The delay was for water and gravel on track, excessive amount of water, standing water. And gravel, we had 4 cars off in separate incidents, and that did bring gravel onto the track. And so we're in the process of cleaning that up. And in so doing, whilst we've done that, the conditions in the standing water have increased because the rain just has not let up. So
do you know what we need?
Towards that.
We need cars on track because they're the best thing to clear the water.
Yeah, I think you're right, Ben.
But hopefully they could stay on track, and that'll be the massive challenge with these highly tuned, powerful machines. Let's go back down to Nick Damon in the pits because he's able to fill time far better than us. We're chatting to some of the very best in the paddock, and one of the very best in the paddock for years gone by is Pierre Caffer.
Pierre, you've experienced many things. This is one of the rainiest days.
Yeah, I think there's quite a bit of rain. I think there's no discussions about wet or slick tires, right? It's right, but it's okay that we delayed everything. I mean, as you can see, I think it's too much rain at the minute.
How are you as kind of your job these days? You're sort of managing the team as well. You're obviously looking at the strategy, looking at what's going on. What is your role within the Share Sport team these days? It's not just a driver, is it?
No. I'm just a driver, and I'm always looking forward to be in the Audi R8 Evo 2. It's a great car, and as I said many times before, we really like this championship, and it's quite unique with gentleman drivers, quite unique with the refueling, and so on and so on. And it's nice to see that the championship is growing at the minute. And it's a great field here in Barcelona, and I'm pretty sure tomorrow it will be dry and we will have lots of great racing action.
We're all hoping. But as a senior driver, obviously one of your roles is to help the rest of the team. But do you get involved in the strategy at all? Do you think about driver strategy and those sort of things?
No. For this we have our strategy guy, and we sometimes we discuss together what we will do. But in the end, it's like I think in every other team that the people who are there for, they take the decision then.
As you say, you're in the Audi, the fantastic R8, but of course Audi are withdrawing slowly from customer support. I mean, how is that going to affect this team, and how's that going to affect you?
Well, Audi customer will still exist for the next couple of years, and we have a great car. At the minute, we don't know what will be in the future, but you are right. The driver side will be not like this year, so there will be changes inside of Audi, but you never know what happened in 2-3 years. And with these great cars, you can run until 28, and Audi has the full support for all customer teams around the world.
Last race of this year's European season. So Share Sport, we're going to see, first of all, we're going to see you back for next year's European season, and are you going to do any of the Middle East races?
It's not decided yet, to be really honest with you. We really like Dubai, and we would love to go back to Dubai, but we don't know if we will do Kuwait or Abu Dhabi.
but back for next year's European season. We got the dates out, of course. We know where we're going. We're starting in Mugello on my birthday, but I can't be there because my stepdaughter's getting married. It's all about me, obviously.
Oh, way. How can we race without you? It's
impossible. I can't not go to her wedding.
Maybe we shift the race. No, but we, at the minute, you know, the dates were coming out today, so we are looking into it. And of course, now we are 2 seasons here in this great championship. And yes, we would like to continue. We will see what's going on next year.
As a team, is a 24-hour straight-through race, is that your favourite sort of race, or do you like the split 12s? What do you, because you get so many options, don't you, in Creventic? What do you like as a team most?
I mean, every race is unique in Creventic, to be honest. I mean, Estoril was the first time 6 and 12 hours, so 24 is always special. And the 12 hours to be split in sometimes 6 and 6 or 5 and 7 or whatever makes it always a bit special in Creventic series. And I always like the new ideas which they are bringing up. And as you know, the calendar for next year has a new racetrack, Misano. So it's great facility there, great atmosphere there, the beach. So it's really, really nice. So.
You're not sort of like one of the teams that likes to go to bed at night between the 2 halves. Yeah, because obviously you've got huge experience in 24-hour racing, endurance races. I mean, is that something you really enjoy, that pounding through the night concept, that keeping going, that kind of constant tactics?
Yeah, it's always like this. I mean, the 24-hour race is always unique, always special, and always different. And this is what I love.
Now, you mentioned Estoril. One thing we saw for the first time in Creventic at Estoril was the new Ferrari 296. It looked a bit quick, didn't it?
No, it's a great car. I mean, no brand built up, let's say, a slow car. So, and Ferrari in the past years, they always have a great development. And I really like to see the 296. It's a beautiful car, and it reminds me always of my times where I've been at Ferrari. And I'm really happy for them, and I'm also really happy for Michele Rinaldi. And as you can see, in 24 at Nürburgring, it was also very competitive and strong and reliable.
So how can you beat it?
Oh, we will see. In strategy, as I said before, you know, probably here we will have some more code 60s or whatever. First, you have to drive. First, you have to stay out of any trouble. There's so many things what happen, as you know, in 24 hours. It's never predicted before.
Yeah, thank you very much. And as a weather update, it's raining heavier than ever before.
Yes, we will wait. Maybe we have a night practice combination with qualifying.
Good idea. So I'll suggest that to Creventic.
That really is bad news coming down from coming out the pits there about the fact that it's raining heavier. We'll continue to have a chat to other people. Nick down there really earning his crust in doing in this delay. He mentioned 2024. We've got the Middle East Trophy coming up, obviously, December in Kuwait, Dubai and Abu Dhabi, as we saw. But next year's season, I think it's a solid season. I think it's a solid calendar. And I'm looking at this not from the perspective of a commentary team, Ben, but I'm sort of putting the logistics of a race team together on there. 12 hours of Mugello is how we've started the season so many times over the past few years. That's at the end of March. To the end of April, we go to Spa. That's, again, a solid track, a solid setup there that we've got. You know, we have drivers, we have teams that want to race at Spa. It's not one of those iconic historic tracks. Portimao, who doesn't want to go to Portimao in the middle of May? Portimao on the Algarve.
And that's a return, obviously. The traditional date was July, but bringing it to May will change the temperature. Obviously, was very hot
much,
in July. May will be so beautiful, so pleasant.
Yes.
Slightly shorter day, probably, but only a little bit.
Mid-20s rather than mid-30s, I think, the weather-wise on the Algarve.
Nice to go back to the Portimao circuit and a full 24-hour race as well.
New circuit on the calendar. It's going to be equally as hot in Misano in Italy in the early July. I mean, where is exact? Where is that on the Adriatic coast, Misano?
Yes.
Yeah, it's it's on the eastern coast of the Italian peninsula, and there are people go to the Adriatic coast in Italy for beach holidays, and Misano isn't that far from the coast, as far as I remember.
Yeah.
So what a fabulous, and again another track with a lot of history. We know, I mean, the circuit's named after Marco Simoncelli, which was the so it's a big in the bike world, but
and that's a traditional racing weekend, circuit weekend, because previously the SRO have gone that weekend to Misano.
I see.
But they, because of their Spa 24 Hours move, everything else has changed around it, and means they'll be going to Misano in May instead, which has opened up that date to be filled. It was a couple of weeks ago exceptionally hot.
Really?
But the good thing is you do have the sea breeze, and you do have a beach, and you do have water to cool down if you're allowed to go there. What is it, at 12 hours? So probably split it in 2 6s. You could have some nice evenings out.
Well, the thing is, Ben, I'm not thinking of it from a personal point, and we'll be barely able to visit a beach. But when you're talking about gentlemen drivers who who like to bring their families out here whilst they race, then places like the Algarve, Portimao on the Algarve, and Misano on the Adriatic coast, that's got to be attractive to the gentlemen drivers who are racing in what is basically their weekends off.
And that is first weekend of school holidays as well.
Right, that's midterm, is it?
Yeah, so it'll be a time where kids will be with parents, and therefore that's a really good opportunity to go on holiday.
And we've got a provisional 24H of Barcelona that's detailed here for September, October. So date to be confirmed for back here to finish off the European Championship. So for me, Ben, I think that is a very, very solid back to basics calendar, if that makes sense to, you know what I mean, back to basics from the logistics sense of the teams here.
Yeah, exactly. I think there's opportunity. We've spoken before with so many interests from lots of very interesting countries that don't have necessarily motorsport backgrounds. There is an opportunity for a championship that is more renegade, that is braver to go to support some of our let's say, Lithuanian teams and find a place to go racing in these places. I once went racing in Georgia because we had the police chief of Georgia racing in TCR Europe. And so we went and raced there. And actually a fantastic race circuit. You'd never expect to go racing in Georgia. But if you've got a person or people or teams that are interested in racing at home and having a home race, why not reward them with that if there is the facilities to do so, and if there's the interest also from the teams to go to those places. So Portimao really is the most difficult place to get to in the whole of that calendar, and that's one of the places that's a preferred place to go to in the world of motorsport. The rain's getting better, I think, or as in it's stopped raining as much, Nick, Damon, or not?
That's wishful thinking. It's gone from absolutely chucking it down to just raining really hard. Now I have a chance to talk to the reigning Barcelona 24-hour Porsche champion. It's J.M. Littman. J.M., how are you?
Yeah, really good. Lovely to be here. I mean, despite the weather. You know, it's sunny back in the UK.
Yeah, I've heard that. But you're not actually racing, you're advising today.
Yeah, well, I mean, as I've been telling you for about 4 years, I'm retiring. But after Barcelona, the win, of course, I thought, you know what, maybe I should retire for a little bit. And but yeah, I'm still working within the industry with Sport 21, working with teams, drivers like HRT here, and just enjoying myself and helping other people out not make mistakes. Or try not to make mistakes.
Try not to make mistakes. So, yeah, just about it, JM did say to me, are you still iRacing? And I said yes. Where was it that someone drove the wrong way around the track? I'll leave that one hanging. We'll put that on later. So what is?
I don't think I've laughed ever so much.
It's fun. It's now up to a certain person who wants to announce what happened to the world or not. It's marvellous. I love this. The control of being on the mic. But on a serious point, I mean, yeah, you've done the 24 hours in a Porsche. How difficult is this race?
Well, normally it's one of the hottest humid races there is on the Canada, and it's a real challenge. And as you know, as Joe knows, I am a sweaty lad. And, you know, after my stint last year, we weighed before and after 4 kilos we lost, you know. F1 drivers moan about losing 2 in Singapore. Well, tried losing 4. Yeah, it's a tough race. Actually, a lot easier now. They got rid of the chicane because that was quite physical. But look, forecast tomorrow is going to be hot and humid. And it is a difficult race. It's a lot, your whole class. You've got GT3s. Really nice to see the Porsche class coming to fore. And actually, it was quite interesting. 3-4 years ago, we'd had 20 TCR cars on the grid, and now TCRs have kind of gone away a little bit because of the new regs, and those cars are not really endurance anymore. And now we've got a big grid of what I think are the best sports cars in the world.
Yeah, I mean, I think the growth of the Porsche 992 class has been absolutely massive over the last 18 months. I mean, as the cars become available, as they've been A, built and B, come out of the other regional series. I mean, you probably know this. It's something you know the answer to. So is it like the same cost to run a Porsche as a TCR in a 24-hour race, or is it difference of magnitude of X?
Roundabout figures. TCR would be about 85-ish.
€1,000 or pounds?
It's about that. And a Porsche could be about 110, 120. I mean, it depends how many tyres you throw out, how much testing you do. But if you look at the performance from a TCR to, what's surprising is a GT4 is as expensive as a Porsche's, which never really makes much sense. A GT4 class, not the best class in the world, as far as I'm concerned. But I think it's why the Porsches, and it's so reliable, and these engines could do 150 hours, which is pretty incredible. And gearboxes even more. So as running cost wise, and that's what they price it at, how many euros does it cost per kilometre? They're actually quite economical in motorsport terms.
Nothing's cheap in motorsport.
No, nothing. I always laugh. People always go, so how much does it cost to go racing? Well, about 120,000. Yeah, but GT3 about 250,000. What, for the season? Oh, it's one 24-hour race. And you spend 40,000 on tyres, and they go, yeah, but you get to reuse the tyres. No, we throw them away after an hour and 10. And people, they cannot get to grips with those kind of things. But of course, it's very eco-friendly because those tyres get made into sneakers and tennis courts and things like that.
I can't think the world needs that many tennis courts, given the amount of tyres we get through.
There's a lot of people in Sussex and, in Belvedere Hills. And
yeah, it's all paddle now, isn't it? Paddle's the big thing.
What, the little, like a big...
On a tennis court, but it's covered entirely by glass. It's like a squash tennis mixture.
Is it like highlight?
It's basically, it's all over TV and it's all over Spain. Spain's where it started, and it's now expanding out, but it's...
We've got tyres to, be used in that kind of thing.
It's always the way. So anyway, so how... Yeah, you're talking about the driver management side of things. I mean, what is it... What does a driver manager do, JM? Let's be honest, what do you actually do?
You know what it is? It's being between them and a team a lot of the time, or the team between them and the driver, and just helping them through the day. You're very emotionally involved when you're racing, and it's easy to kind of lose the focus of where you're supposed to be. And it might just be simple things like, a driver's not getting enough time, or don't think their engineer's listening to them. And of course, it can get all emotional and heated. And it's just at that point of just putting a break between someone, but also trying to find people to drive in initially. I mean, on Wednesday, as I got on a plane, I had a call from a Fanatec GTWC team. Very last minute, needed a drive in a Lamborghini this weekend in Valencia. I'm on the calls, making people who's available, and we managed to find someone to jump in that car last minute. And I like it. I like still being involved in motorsport.
But on the reverse side, you're saying you're calming the driver down against him. Do you also have to read the riot act to the team sometime as a driver representative?
No, yeah, for sure. Listen, this is all customer racing, which basically means everyone's paying somehow to be here, apart from a few pros. And it's an expensive weekend, as we just discussed. And sometimes, I'm not saying any team in particular here, because I think actually Creventic teams are very good in general. They forget who the customer is. £20,000, £30,000 is one hell of a holiday. And that's what people are spending here. And it's just, little things can make all the difference. Helmet dryers are today invaluable, because it's just making things a bit more pleasant for drivers. Having enough M&Ms with the brown ones.
Well, that's obviously, yeah, because it's in the rider. But on a serious question, we talk about, driver race turned up. He's paid €40,000 for whatever it is for this race, yeah? Is it, there's the €40,000 check and that's it? Or if Barry, the driver one, ploughs it into the wall and you don't get to drive, you get a refund. What happens? Tell me about it. I'm really interested to know what happens at that point.
Well, it all depends on who's negotiated that contract. And some of these contracts are, not worth the paper they're written on. But that's another really important thing. You've got to establish what's going to happen. Because stuff goes wrong. And look, as a general rule, if the car breaks down or smashes or gets crashed in the first stint, you would get a percentage back, hopefully, and so on. But listen, if you're probably 4 or 5 hours into the race and you haven't raced yet, you're probably not going to see any of your money.
But if you're the guy who crashes it, do you pay more?
Well, you'll pay your the insurance. So all these cars are insured, kind of. So pretty much all these cars will have a 20,000 euro excess. And on a GT3, if you nudge it against anything, that's going to be 20,000. Front end of the Porsche, new bumper, new rads. Well, that's probably going to cost you 5k. So, yes, the car is insured, but also only insured up probably to 100,000. So if you completely destroy the car, then there's even more to pay. But yeah, let's hope that doesn't happen to anyone.
So when we see these situations where, say in practice, like it's blown an engine or there's been a shunt, and what is that go, no-go decision to rebuild it in time for the race?
It all depends on spare cars. A lot of these teams, HRT will have spare cars there, and that's the issue, thing. It's going to swap a car, or they'll cannibalize it for parts, etc., like that. But let's say, going back to the insurance thing, the guy in front of you's engine's just exploded, and you've then taken out 4 or 5 cars. You're not responsible for those 4 or 5 cars. They have to pay their own damage, which is pretty horrific sometimes.
But is it sort of in the contract that if something goes wrong, they will put it right? Because obviously
they will make every effort to get the car out. I mean, I've been in cars that are broken down in the first hour, and teams have wanted to repair it, and it's going to take 3 hours, and there's no point. Let's just go to the bar and have a drink. Of course, the team doesn't want to do that because they don't want to give anyone's money back. But there's certain instances like that. You can't make 3 hours back. You can't make an hour back, really. So, I'm there to, and have done, to say, look, guys, why don't we just quits? Because what's going to happen next? The only thing that can happen now is that we'll be an hour, 2 hours behind, the podium. And then what happens when you get taken out the night? It can only get worse from now on. If we quit now, it's going to get better. I mean, I know this is endurance, but you've got to look at these things logically sometimes.
Now, as we've gone on, there's more and more customer racing. It's got more and more expensive, but teams are do you think teams are more and more professional? Are teams being run as proper businesses now, do you think? Or are they still guys who just want to go racing?
There's still hobbyists in this series. There's still hobbyists in a lot of series. But you have to be professional about this stuff. And without a doubt, I've seen over the years things to get more professional. And that's all again what Sport 21 tries to do. We work with teams just to give them a little hint about, let's look after the drivers a little better. Let's give them somewhere to sit. HRT, for instance, hire a hospitality suite. They've got some beds up there. They have a physio to look after the team. We've got hot drinks. We've got cold drinks. It's all about trying to make sure the driver is kind of happy where they're at and comfortable, and it's going to come back next time and spend money for sure.
So HRT, who are obviously a very professional team, we've seen them, all around with many cars. That is a business that has to make a profit every year.
Yeah, exactly, and that's why, again, Sport 21, it's not here to break people's balls both sides. It's about trying to find a compromise and delivering a service for the team and also for the driver. Occasionally you'll get a very cheap drive, sometimes even a free drive at the last minute if you're the right driver, a bronze, for instance, and they need an AM at the last minute. Yeah, maybe you can. And there's no doubt the team's losing money. They are losing a lot of money, but in case they have to fill the car. But yeah, I mean, ultimately it's a business. Everyone's here to make money, but without, ripping people off.
Jen, thank you very much, and good luck to Sport 21. Good luck to your guys in the HRT pit.
Thanks, guys. Lovely seeing you guys. Really nice to see you back.
Cheers, Jen.
Great to have HRT here with 4 cars entered in the 992 category.
Great insight, that, though, Ben. There'll be a lot of fans out there who have no idea the machinations and the complexity of just finalising and putting yourself in a car. And great insight from GM. I mean, I remember, running 5 Clios in the Clio Cup Championship, and each driver had what was a bespoke, complex way of of paying us and paying the team and going about their racing. And you know, people might not even have realised that the cars are insured. You can insure them. It's not like on the road where, you know, if I hit your race car, I'm liable for your damage. That's not what GM, and I think GM explained. I'm insuring the car against damaging it myself or another member of the team. So, yeah, great insight.
I wish it was like that half the time when you get knocked off. And then you have to pay your damage.
I think the race stewards would really love that sort of responsibility.
I'm pretty sure the Motors TV UK Karting Challenge, which is the first time I ever did TV, had a rule like that. Because it was an independent championship.
If I spun off and caused your accident, I'd have to pay for your damage.
Yeah.
Heavens.
As you can see, we have vehicles on circuit. We have a sweeper vehicle on circuit. And we have a Nissan GTR safety car. But the rain has got worse. It is absolutely awful rain falling. I didn't think it looked too bad for the Nissan, actually, as we came past the camera there. Certainly no standing big puddles. That sweeper is going back and forward, trying to remove some fluid from... Where are we looking at there? Trying to work it out. I think we're looking at turn... where are we? Turn 9. Turn 9, is it? Gosh, I never would have said that was turn 9.
Yeah, that's the very fast right-hand sweep.
It shows
up the hill.
Like that. It doesn't look as half as easy as it is when you're actually on circuit. It
doesn't
look like a 90 there.
It doesn't look like the Catalonia. It looks like a bad day at Alton Park, mate. That's looking at that sky. It's like I didn't come to Spain for this.
Absolutely. And don't worry, people. It is going to be fine.
Yeah, it is.
Tomorrow.
It's going to be 27 degrees tomorrow, cracking the pavement, as they say.
I put shorts in the bag for tomorrow and Sunday.
I didn't even bring a coat. I didn't bring a coat. I was an hour down the road and I thought, oh, where's me? I don't need one.
Yeah. No.
Hadn't checked the weather, had I?
You hadn't checked the weather because this was forecast. And these massive storms that are coming through the Mediterranean. And just, well, they're supposed to have America's Cup racing happening on the coast this weekend as well. Not sure I want to go sailing in this, especially in those vehicles or boats. We have been not running for nearly an hour. I'm not entirely sure what we're waiting for, other than for somebody to make a decision on whether we can continue or not. The thing is, we have got times on the board. Yes, we haven't completed qualifying sessions, but we have had the amateur competitors in each of those cars set a time, and we do kind of have a grid. So my main concern is, before a 24-hour race, you need to get night practice in. Regulation from the FIA says that every driver needs to experience night conditions. This is far too wet to go and do our night session later.
I mean, that without daylight, it's bad enough. Visibility,
yeah.
The visibility, I think, is what's stopping this perhaps continuing. We've got standing water everywhere. The amount of spray. That's why we got cars going off. Yes, there's a grip issue, but there's a lot of elements with regards to safety out there on track with the rain still falling. Now, Nick did mention that the rain was falling ever heavier. However, that weather front, if you just look to your left there, Ben, and you can see the clouds breaking.
Oh, yeah.
So better weather is on its way.
Yeah.
It's just how quickly it will be on its way.
And safety car is in the pit lane and has joined Nick Damon. Nick Damon is down at Haas RT, who lie at the moment after Q1 in 7th overall.
Oh. The cameraman's Seb's getting wet. This is a nightmare. We're going to the edge of the garage with Sandrine Haas, the name above the door. Sandrine, first of all, a very different driver lineup. Just Mathieu Dutré, retained from the last race. So explain to me the driver choices of Gavin Pickering, Kev Cools, Martin Hoffer, I don't know what Mr. Panu's first name is.
Okay, Mr. Panu's name is Mika.
Mika, obviously he's Finnish.
Okay, yes. Okay, Mathieu as usual. Max has driven with us before in Monza, remember?
I was at Le Mans.
Well, you missed it all. Mika, Panu was driving with us as well in Monza.
When I was also at Le Mans.
Yeah. Chris Coles, Belgian driver, but he knows Chris the team manager, and Gavin, Mr. Picky. Well, he's been driving with. He knows Chris as well, the team.
So a very important question. Have any of them have to delay buying furniture to do this race?
I don't think so. I hope not. I hope not.
For those of you who weren't with us in Estoril, one of the drivers for Sandrine had on the back of the car said "Désolé pour la divan" because he'd been sitting on in his house and he got a phone call to go race, which meant he couldn't buy a new sofa for him and his girlfriend, him and his wife. So they're still standing up now, and he's not driving. You've got 5 different furniture-based drivers.
No, but I think Greg finally managed to buy that sofa. Well, I'm not sure because he did the 25-hour Fun Cup as well. So I'm not sure. But I thought, didn't you say that you guys were going to take care of that sofa?
Well, we're going to find the sofa. And you brought some friends from Antigua. Sorry, come here. You've got a couple of guys who come over from Antigua. Oh, they got the wrong way. That's the wet way. You've gone the wet way. You don't want to do that. That's damp. So we have come in, guys. Come in. Your name is?
Tito Thomas.
Tito and?
Philbert Mason.
So you guys are actually from Antigua, and so are you friends of Sandrine or just big motorsport fans?
Both. So we have this channel called the Displacement Podcast that we're into motorsport, so we're trying to bring more awareness to the sport as well and to the car as well. So we're here supporting Sandrine and trying to push the country as well.
Is there a lot of support for motorsport in Antigua?
There is. We actually have a rally track where Sandrine does a lot of driving as well. Along with his son Nico and a lot of other locals setting up cars, and they do a lot of rally. And we have a drag racing track as well, 2 of those, and we just recently opened a karting track as well.
So is the aim, and obviously you'll need to perhaps go to another one of the islands or to mainland US to go to a racetrack. Is the aim to get an Antiguan into this car?
That would be wonderful, and yes, I'm sure Sandrine is going to work on that. But yeah, we'd love to get an Antiguan in the car and get someone over here performing, doing well, and as well to invite you guys to come over and enjoy the beaches and not the rain. Of course, because right now it's extremely hot in Antigua right now. Yeah.
Good point. Basically, they're inviting us over. There are all our new best friends. It's fantastic. So, I mean, tell us a bit more about your podcast. 'Cause obviously, the limited amount of sport is in Antigua. So, what else are you talking about, and what goes on?
Well, truly, we started our podcast because we kind of have a mutual interest in electronic vehicles, EV vehicles. But what we realized is that in order to give information about electronic vehicles, we have to then educate persons about the regular car, which then it took off because a lot of persons just jump in the car and just drive. They don't understand that you have to service your car regularly, the reasons how your tires are set up. There's a lot of small details about cars that a lot of persons just did not know.
So it's sort of advice for road cars as well as let's have a look at what's going on in motorsport.
Indeed, that's exactly what it's about. And so we're here doing a bit of the extreme end, looking at the behind the scenes of what a motorsport team actually does, which a lot of people back home would never ever really see. Mainly because prior to Sandrine, none of us actually knew or took care of what happened during endurance racing.
Brilliant stuff, Sandrine. So this must be very warming for you to get some support from the islands.
Yeah, it's great to have them. And now even more people watching. I've got friends that WhatsApp me and in a bar, restaurant called Cloggies. They put the big screen on. They're watching. I think they're still watching live. And some other friends. And one of the mechanics that came, Jim, he couldn't make it this time, but I know he's watching live as well. And
I mean, that's a good point, actually. You guys are talking about basic maintenance, but do you think there's a possibility, an easier possibility in a way than getting a driver is getting a guy onto the team to mechanic for them?
I think it's possible. Very much so. We have a lot of good mechanics in Antigua, but again, getting here and seeing the technicalities and how efficient and all these things, there's a lot of nuances to it, so we have to work our way there. It's just not going to happen overnight,
Great stuff. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nick. Always great, as we were speaking earlier about Lithuania, having these countries that maybe don't have such a rich heritage of motorsport getting involved, and Antigua not having a very Antiguan weather day. As you can see from the graphics at the bottom, we are cancelling the Q2 and Q3. No information as to how that will affect the grid, although we do have times in Q1 from the majority of the races, so potentially that sets the grid. It remarkably is getting brighter out on circuit, but we need to get our night practice in. It's incredibly important, and therefore also need to get our support races before that in, because they are given track time too. So we are cancelling the remaining of this session. Thank you very much for joining us. And we await to see what will happen. We are going to be racing tomorrow in beautiful sunshine, in beautiful warm conditions, and the race starts. The 24 hours of Barcelona, the 24th edition, will start at midday local time. So make sure you join us. But we will also have coverage of our night practice in just under 2 hours' time. So hopefully we'll get cars back out on circuit, and there'll be plenty of experience to be had if that rain has finished. We're hearing blue skies to the south. That's the south, isn't it? Yeah. But black skies that have passed us, and kind of middle range skies coming towards us right now. Rain is still falling hard. Safety car is in. And therefore, it's time to say goodbye, I imagine. I'm not sure what else there is to say. I'm just waiting to hear somebody to tell me that we're stopping. I don't know if I'm allowed to stop. Should I just stop?
I think so. Shall we?
Yeah, just stop. All right, we'll see you later.
Right, see you later.
Cheers.
See you in night practice.
Oh, mate. We're not stopping yet. Okay, so give us a few moments' time. We were a little bit premature, as per usual for me.
We have no information as to how we're forming the grid. We'll wait for that to come.
Yeah.
We'll report on that in night practice. I think the decision has been the right decision when you think about it, Ben. We've been telling everyone how important night practice is going to be. The skies are clearing, actually. We've got blue broken, but peaks of blue breaking through the clouds across to the left. And so that's going to enable us to perhaps have no rain going into night practice. Night practice coming to you live from 25 to 9, that's Central European time. So that's 25 to 8 in the United Kingdom, if that's where you are. I can't do the maths for everywhere else in the world. So we'll bid everyone good night, Ben, and we'll see you in night practice.
Bye-bye.